Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei had Omnitrix from Ben 10 as Sacred Gear movie. Before we start, please go support Albro 13,000 for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some wrong he or she calling here because it's translated, so let me clear this. Issei is a male in this story. For logo. Well, here I am narrating the beginning of my story. Well, I better start right away. My name is Issei Haidu, son of Goru Haidu and Mitsuki Haidu, brother of Kani Haidu. Let's out Issei. If you're wondering what my life is like, well, let's say it's not the best. I'm hated and pushed aside by my parents and the other members of my family, especially by my sister Kani, who is arrogant. Let's out another sigh. From birth, in a way they loved me, but after a while they started to hate me. I never knew the reason, but really, at this moment it's not important. They pushed me aside and started paying more attention to Kani. From that moment on she had started to bother me. It would start with one or another harmless mockery. But then everything started to go from worse to worse. Sorry, I don't know exactly how the saying goes, but leaving it aside. In every school we've been to, she'd started telling everyone that I was a pervert. After that everyone started to distance themselves from me, then they'd start making fun of me, and finally the bullying would start letting out another sigh, and I've tried to do everything possible to avoid that, but I've never succeeded. I wish things weren't like that. Storyteller. You could see him as a boy walking through the streets of his city in complete darkness of the night. The boy would pass under one of the lights that illuminated the streets at night, thus showing his appearance, a boy of about 14 years old, brown hair of a somewhat dark tone and light green eyes, wearing a black short-sleeved shirt, which had two lines that even from the neck to the edge of the sleeves. Both were green. He also had a line that ran across the chest to the bottom of the shirt, with a number 10 in white. He also had long brown pants, and wore light green and white sneakers. Along with it he was wearing black gloves with short fingers, a zip-up sweatshirt with green edges, two lines on the left arm, and a number 10 of the same color on the left chest. This boy was Issei Haidu. He was going right now in the streets of his city to escape for at least a few hours from his family. Today was precisely his sister's birthday, which only meant something to him: more abuse, and right then he didn't want to go through that, so he decided to take a walk around the city, probably going to the new restaurant known as Mr. Smoothie. According to what he heard there, they sold a great variety of matitas, which was the brown-haired boy's favorite drink. Those matitas are really delicious, said Issei with a small smile, while walking through the desolate streets of his city. Now what do I plow? The green-eyed man asked himself thoughtfully. Help, was the cry of a woman coming from an alley. At that moment, on impulse, Issei would run to the alley, where when he arrived he found a horrible scene from his point of view. Before him was the corpse of a man, next to him was a woman who was crying and screaming for help, and before her was what from Issei's point of view was a demon, since it had bat wings. The demon had a kind of crimson sword which seemed to cut the human foot if it touched it, like a heated knife cutting butter, but if he saw the woman's eyes, which only transmitted pure fear, sadness and horror, the brown-haired man would not hesitate and would take the lid of a trash can, then throw himself at the demon, which would be hit in the head by the brown-haired man who held the lid like a shield, who upon hitting him, would do so Captain America style, causing the demon to be stunned, which was taken advantage of by Issei to give him another blow and take another lid from a trash can, then throw himself at the demon's head. The duel recoiled in pain. Get out of here now, Issei said, putting himself in a defensive pose, ready to receive the demon's attack, which was a horizontal slash with his sword. Ubi, but what about you? The girl asked, stuttering. He releases the lid and takes another one. Since the demon's sword had destroyed the previous one, that's the least of it. I'll give you enough time to escape, Issei said before launching himself towards the demon, while the girl fled. He would try to give a horizontal slash to the brown-haired boy, but would be cornered with some difficulty, so that he would then give him a direct blow again to the head of the demon, who had become more angry, to which, creating a magic circle, he would launch a blast of magical energy, which would be uselessly repeated against the trash can lid, which would be destroyed, giving him access to the blast of energy to hit the green-haired boy's chest, which was sent out of the alley. Damn human, how dare you do that to me? You are just an insignificant cockroach against a titan, said the demon with superiority and arrogance as he approached Issei threateningly. Well, it's like the story of the turtle and the rabbit. If you're so arrogant, you might fall, said Issei before throwing a fragment of the trash can lid at him, which hit the demon's eye directly, thus leaving him one-eyed in his left eye. Damn worm, he said with anger and hatred, before kicking Issei, who would go several meters skidding on the ground. He would try to get up, but would only fall to the concrete due to all his wounds. Damn it, Issei said in pain, showing that he saw how the demon would approach him, while he raised his sword over his shoulder. Last words, damned human, said the demon, while holding his sword over his shoulder. Damn you, Issei said in pain before seeing how the demon made his sword descend towards his neck. Apparently this is my end. Well, at least I saved someone before dying, Issei thought before closing his eyes, but in that instant, he would feel how his body began to move of its own free will. "Time to be a hero" were the words of a voice that Issei heard behind his head before being enveloped by a green light which faded within a second, showing another being, quite different from a human. Issei transformation. He gets up from the floor while the wounds on his chest and other parts of his body began to regenerate. "You think you can do whatever you want, don't you? You think you can decide someone's destiny, right? Well, I'm going to tell you something." He gets into a combat pose, having his hands like claws from which small flames began to light up which began to become more powerful. "You are nobody and nothing to decide that, since you are only a bastard to be able to decide someone's destiny," said the humanoid being seriously and authoritatively, while in his hands there were 2 fireballs, one in each hand. "Who the hell believes you to tell me that?" said the demon angrily while holding his sword firmly. "Who and what am I to tell you that?" he asked sarcastically. "Well, I'm the one who's going to kick your ass," said the being before launching himself towards the demon, who did the same. "Damn bastard, I'll kill you," said the demon before making a horizontal slash. "You would succeed if you didn't lose first," said the being, before dodging the demon's sword and extending his arm to the demon's chest, from where a flame came out of his hand. The flames sent the demon flying, which crashed into the wall of a building, while its chest burned like hell, which only caused the demon to start screaming, thus calling the attention of the people who were sleeping, who looked out the window or left their houses to see what was happening. "Damn, I think I went too far," he said before being enveloped by a green light that would fade away in a second, revealing a kind of armored velociraptor. Issei transformation. "I better go," said the velociraptor before disappearing in an explosion of speed, leaving a trail of blue and green, which chewed where the velociraptor had gone. Time after. You could see how the velociraptor was running through the streets of the city avoiding being seen, until it occurred to him to go to the forest, which he did, thus reaching the nearest forest, and then entering it and running for a few seconds to go further into the forest, but a beep in his chest caught his attention, to which he would stop and then be enveloped by a red light. Which faded away the second, thus showing Issei who was upset. What the hell was that? He begins to check his body because now I don't have the wounds. Oh my god, he begins to breathe deeply to calm down, barely managing what the hell happened. Then Issei feels something on his left wrist. "What is this?" Issei asked, quite confused. "It looks like a digital clock." He starts to touch it, but it doesn't show the time, he said, while making a movement causing the plate that had the image of an Herglis to slide up, showing a dial which had another image of an Herglis. "And what's this?" Issei asked before pressing the dial and being enveloped by a green light. "It burned me," Issei shouted in a rough voice before throwing himself to the ground and starting to roll in the grass, causing it to catch fire. "Help me, it burned me," he screamed again while asking for help until he realized something. "It burned me, but I'm not feeling any pain," said Issei, while looking at himself carefully. "I wonder if," said Mara, extending his arm from which a small ball of fire came out. "Wow," exclaimed Issei in amazement. At that point Issei would begin to throw more fireballs until he had come up with the idea of concentrating the fire in his palm, which he would do, and then release the fire, which came out in the form of a flame, which crashed into several trees which began to burn, but the more time passed the faster it turned to ash, which happened, only leaving a large amount of ash on the ground. "Wow, great, what other things could I do?" he said while looking at his right hand. "I wonder if I can absorb it," he said before extending his right arm to a tree that was burning. He saw that nothing was happening, to which he would concentrate, and from one moment to another the flames of the tree would go to his hand, which absorbed all the fire. "Wow. It seems I have pyrokinesis," and that he realizes something. "Oh no, I think I went too far," said Issei with an indifferent look Saitama style, as he watched his own fire burn several trees, causing a forest fire. Then, he became serious and extended his 2 arms, then concentrated and began to absorb the fire, which went to his 2 hands, which absorbed every last living flame in place, leaving only Issei's form as the only source of heat. "I think that's it," Issei said before he started to hear a beep, which came from his little one where the dial with the Herglis was. "And what's with this beep?" Issei asked, somewhat confused, before being enveloped by a red light. The same light faded away the second, showing Issei in his original form. "It seems I have a time limit," Issei said to himself as he looked at the watch on his left wrist. "That's right, but you can extend the time limit or simply eliminate it," said that voice that he had heard in the fight against that demon. Hey, you're that voice that sounded in my head when I fought that demon," Issei said excitedly. "If so, that's me, but I'll tell you later who or what I am. First we have to go to a safe place because the firefighters and police are coming," said the voice again, while in the background the sirens of the police and firefighters could be heard. "You have a point, but I'm leaving here quickly," Issei said while hiding in some bushes. "Press the clock plate, a selector will appear, turntable, and select one of the following images that I will send you," said the voice, and after a second he would receive several images of what seemed to be faces, which were green in color. "Okay, I think I'll select this one," he said before searching and finding the face he had chosen in the selector, then making a movement causing the plate to slide up revealing the dial with the Herglis. Now you have to suppress it, said the voice to which Issei would pay attention and then be evoked by a green light, which faded the second showing. Issei transformation. Okay, now I transformed, although it's a bit weird, I feel like my body isn't mine and it's someone else's, Issei said, a little confused. Something rules, after all, your whole body has changed, but leaving that aside, it is better that you go. The transformation you have I call fast track. You have great speed and reflexes, but be careful when stopping, because if you are not careful when braking, you will most likely crash into something, the voice reported simply. Okay, I'll be careful, although I'll probably crash into something, said Issei, turned into fast track before starting to run at high speed, leaving a trail of blue and black. Time after. You could see how fast track Iva was running through the city streets, but when trying to brake it would skid and crash into a tree, stunning it, almost leaving it on the verge of unconsciousness. Hey boy, are you okay? The voice asked, somewhat worried about Issei. Why yes, he staggers a little. Well, I really don't know, said Issei before falling on his back and thus becoming unconscious, because when he fell on his back he had hit his head. Issei's mental space. Oh, that hurt, said an Issei who stood up and rubbed his head, then looked around and saw that he was in a desolate place. And that Issei saw how a man approached him. And you are? Issei asked, somewhat confused. Yo, I am Benjamin Tennyson, also known as Ben 10,000, said the man with a big smile. Chapter 1. Omnitrix. Issei narrates. Hello again, here Issei hide you, starting with the narration back, so it would be better if we started. After seeing who the man was, he was a certain Benjamin Kirby Tennyson, also known as Ben 10,000 or simply Ben. He had told me the reason why I was in my supposed mental space. Apparently I am his supposed reincarnation. Ben had told me how he died. It had been because of age. Although he did not know why he was with his appearance of 48 years old, but he simply let it go, so he sat down to tell me what I would get to be his reincarnation, which was a level 20 device that allowed me to transform into different alien forms, about 1,010,000 or maybe more. The truth is I do not remember what the exact number was, but leaving that aside. He had given me the Omnitrix, which was the strange watch that had suddenly appeared on my left wrist when I voluntarily transformed for the first time. And if you're wondering what I mean by first time, and no, I don't know, like the third, the reason is that when I transformed into a certain form known as Swampfire and one called XLR8, it had been Ben who had taken control of my body to fight against that demon, which I am grateful for with all my soul, since if I was the one fighting I would have died in less than 10 seconds. Even though according to Ben I hadn't done anything wrong against the demon before he controlled me, he only told me that I lacked strength and experience, but that he would take care of it. The bad thing is that he was only going to stay about 2 years, since in the afterlife were all his family and friends, and he didn't want to leave them, which I hadn't seen any problem with. Since in itself he was right, a family doesn't have to be separated. Storyteller. An Issei could be seen resting on a tree in the forest while looking at the Omnitrix selector, which showed the upper half of the disc the faces of the aliens. Ben had told him to train and get used to their alien forms. Let's see, well, Ben does my training regimen. I have to get used to my alien forms, said Issei before selecting a form, at which the lid of the Omnitrix would lift and leave the core of the Omnitrix in view, which was pressed by the brown-haired boy. Issei transformation. Wow, I look like a child, Issei said simply, while looking at himself. Hey Omnitrix, what can this form do, and what would its name be? Issei asked the device on his forehead. I'll tell you right away, Issei said the Omnitrix before describing Issei's transformation. Omnitrix. The form it has at this moment is called Ditto. It belongs to the Splixin species. His powers and abilities. Ditto has the ability to clone itself without limit. Each Ditto functions independently, regardless of what others want it to do, and each clone is distinct from the others. The green protrusions raised on Ditto's body are sensor nodes, which help create a sensory network around the Ditto clones. This sensory network allows the clones to share senses and physical sensations. Ditto is more flexible than a normal human. Ditto can breathe underwater. Ditto can jump surprisingly high for its size. Ditto can dig agilely and hide underground as an escape resource. Weaknesses. Ditto clones share a bond with each other, so when one Ditto is hurt, all the others feel the same pain, but this weakness does not apply in Omniverse. It may be possible that Ditto can control the sensory signals of other clones at will. If the original Ditto is defeated, the clones are automatically defeated as well, nullifying the ability to form a clone army. They announce that it is its natural predator and, like Ditto, it can duplicate itself. That would be all the information collected over the years, Issei said the Omnitrix with a female voice, after giving the information about the transformation. Thanks for the information, Omnitrix, said Issei before he began to divide into two, thus creating a clone. Who are you? The clone asked. You, Issei responded simply. Me? The clone asked, confused. Yes, you, I mean me, Issei answered again. Stop joking, who are you? the clone asked again, somewhat annoyed. I am Issei answered sincerely. HO was what the clone said before bringing his hands to the side of his head with a surprised expression. I'm after. Well, let's try this one said Issei before oppressing the core of the Omnitrix. Issei transformation. I feel fat said Issei as he walked a few steps, but he would lose his balance and fall on his back, ending up like an upside-down turtle. As Issei tried to get up demons he cursed angrily, as he tried to get up Omnitrix. What is the information on this alien? Issei asked the Omnitrix that was there in his stomach. I'll tell you right away, Issei said the Omnitrix before informing what alien form Issei was transformed into. Omnitrix. The shape it has is called Canonmold, belonging to the Pelorota arburiano species. Canonmold can curl into a ball, encasing himself in his armor. In general, the Arburian Pelorota species primarily use this maneuver for defense, like an armadillo. However, since Ben didn't know about this when he discovered Canonmold, he used Canonmold's original defensive capabilities as a weapon. Uncoiled, Canonmold becomes a motorized wheel that can move at high speeds due to chemicals in his exoplates reducing friction and can increase his rotational momentum to hit and/or run over enemies. Canonmold can maneuver around his environment in a ball-like shape thanks to the short fur on his body, registering changes in the air and movement around him. Between that and his excellent hearing, Canonmold is granted something akin to echolocation, giving him eyeless vision. Canonmold can bounce off surfaces like a pinball in its spherical form, suffering little to no loss of momentum. Canonmold can use his sphere form to increase his agility by rapidly opening his ball form while in the air. He can also use this form to create shockwaves and spin into a fierce tornado. Despite his top-heavy body, Canonmold has enhanced reflexes, dexterity, and balance, allowing him to quickly change into ball form to suit his immediate needs. Canonmold can hold people and fairly large objects within his spheroid form and provide them with the same level of protection as he does. Canonmold possesses enhanced strength, being able to fight on par with enemies of his own size. He can also break free from traps made of lepidopteran slime. From within its shell, Canonmold can withstand twice the heat of re-entry into Earth's atmosphere. Similarly, its shell is resistant to acids and lava, as well as the low temperatures of places like Mictlandiae. Canonmold's exoplates can deflect lasers, even when not in the form of a sphere. Canonmold is able to withstand the vacuum of space, but he still needs to breathe. Without an oxygen supply, Canonmold is limited to holding his breath. Canonmold can be powered by electricity, such as that generated by a Gymnopithecus. This allows him to gain much more power and momentum when in sphere form. Weaknesses. Canonmold is subject to the physical laws of reflection and conservation of momentum, meaning he has difficulty stopping or controlling his direction if he increases speed too much. Canonmold's bipedal form is top-heavy, making him very unbalanced and clumsy. This is because Arburian ballbearers are built for spinning, not walking. However, he can still use his sphere form to enhance his agility. Canonmold's large body makes it difficult for him to move in small spaces. Canonmold can emit some sort of odor, which people housed in his spheroid form may find repulsive. Canonmold can be trapped by strong adhesives. Similarly, his rotation can be stalled by beings with as much strength as a sui generis chimera. Canonmold cannot roll on slippery surfaces, such as puddles made of Gurman slime. Even though his shell is resistant to extreme heat as he re-enters Earth's atmosphere, Canonmold can still suffer a mild amount of pain from the force of the impact. Unlike its shell, Canonmold's skin is not heat-resistant. This is all the information collected from each use that Ben had given to Canonmold, reported the Omnitrix in a somewhat monotonous tone. Okay, thanks for the information Issei said before turning into a sphere and starting to roll. I'm after. Let's see which one I use now Issei said while looking at the Omnitrix elector this debit term before the Omnitrix core showed up and was pressed by Issei. Issei transformation. Great, I'm a plant said Issei surprised. Hey Omnitrix, could you tell me the information about this alien please said Issei. I will immediately inform you of the abilities of the alien species Florana Issei said the Omnitrix before informing Issei of what this form could do. Omnitrix. Powers and abilities. Weaned can grow and retract from her body and can combine with plant life, such as a tree, and control its branches. She can also grow pods to catch others, which seem to come out of her fingers. Weaned can grow seeds on its back that contain a large amount of substances lethal and non-lethal. Weaned can grow spikes on her legs and then slam them down on enemies, as well as spin in the air to disperse her seed bombs and throw seed bombs into the air, basically firing them at her enemies. Weaned is able to burrow underground quickly. Weaned can grow thorns on its body. As shown in the Gathering of Evil, Weaned is immune to the effects of the gases. Weaned cannot be hypnotized. Weaknesses. Weaned vines can be tangled. It must also be weak to fire and ice, like plants when burned, and weak to great cold. And that would be all, said the Omnitrix, finishing the explanation. Okay, thank you very much for the information. Now let's see if it's true about combining with the trees, said Issei before approaching a tree and then beginning to fuse with it. Time after. Let's see when I use it now. Issei wondered, looking at the selector while he rested his feet on a tree and his back on the grass. Let's see how this one goes, Issei said before pressing the Omnitrix core. Issei transformation. What am I? Issei asked. You are currently a Galilian. I will now give you information about the form you possess, which is also known as Gravitac, said the Omnitrix. Omnitrix. Powers and abilities. Gravitac can control gravity to manipulate the weight of objects, the movement of objects, or knock them down into the ground with ease. Gravitac can cause matter or energy to orbit around him when he rolls himself into a planetoid sphere for orbit attacks. Gravitac can manipulate his own gravity by turning into a ball. His powers manifest by having it orbit him. Weaknesses. Gravitac's large body makes it difficult to move in tight spaces. And that would be all, Issei said the Omnitrix. Okay, thanks for the information, Issei said before turning into a ball, and several objects began to orbit around him. Time after. Issei transformation. Amazing, I'm a werewolf, Issei exclaimed with excitement. Correction is a lobe and I will give you the information of the species below, said the Omnitrix. Omnitrix. Blitzwolfer can emit a powerful green ultrasonic howl by opening its four-hinged snout that can reflect incoming projectiles or propel itself upward like a booster rocket. He has enhanced senses of smell and hearing, as well as agility, speed and strength. He also has extraordinary night vision. Blitzwolfer has formidable claws, fangs, and strength. The claws on his feet can grab like his hands, just like Hawk. Like all aliens from the inner system, Blitzwolfer is immune to the effects of corrodium. And that would be all, Issei said the Omnitrix. Thanks for the information, Issei thanked with emotion while he opened his snout in 4 parts, from which came a sonic howl that destroyed several trees. Time after. You could see how an Issei was transformed into XLR8 while traveling at high speed, dodging cars, and thanks to his speed, no one could capture him perfectly. Hey Issei, I already have your training regimen, Ben said excitedly. Okay, tell me which one it is when we get home, Issei said before increasing his speed. Chapter 2. Time to be a hero. Storyteller. You could see how 15-year-old Issei was on top of a building, sitting looking down, how people walked and cars passed, all of them minding their own business. Then he stood up and activated the Omnitrix and then threw himself into the abyss, which prepared a certain death for him, but he would be enveloped by a green light, which faded away the second, showing a kind of bluish moth with humanoid characteristics and with yet another touch of black. Issei transformation. Cold was Issei's roar before he began to fly and turn translucent. While Issei was flying inside his mind, the Omnitrix was giving himself instructions to get to a certain place. 2 blocks west, then 1 block north, and finally 1 block west. The Omnitrix guided its wearer, who upon arriving, had encountered a large group of criminals who were robbing a bank. Thanks for the Omnitrix guide, it would be better to use another alien for this job, Issei said before pressing the dial of the Omnitrix that is on his waist, above a belt. Issei transformation. Ghostly Issei roared again, before turning invisible. Time after. You could see how Issei transformed into a ghostly being, became visible behind the criminals who were inside the bank. Without hesitation or thinking twice, he would enter one of the criminals, thus posing him, causing the criminal's eyes to turn green, but they would be covered by Issei thanks to some sunglasses, who had a hostage. After that he would release the hostage. And then firmly take the weapon that the criminal he controlled had, so that in a quick movement he shoots his companions in the legs, thus leaving them on the floor in pain. What the hell is wrong with you, Richard? Complained one of them, of which there were 3. Sorry, but it's Richard. He takes off his glasses, revealing his eyes. Right now I'm not there, said Issei, before leaving the body of the criminal who fell to the floor unconscious. What the hell? Said another of the criminals in horror. He's a demon, said another, and the last of the 3 looking at Issei turned into a ghost. No, well yes, Issei said jokingly, before 3 tentacles came out of his chest and held the 3 criminals. What are you going to do to us? One of them asked fearfully. Will you kill us? Another asked fearfully. Kill them? Oh come on, there are fates worse than death, Issei said before moving his hands to his chest and moving his skin, showing his insides, which scared the 3 criminals who fainted from fear. After that, he would drop them to the ground, then go to a wall and go through it, thus reaching the other side. Encountering more criminals than seeing him, they opened fire on the ghostly alien, which did not receive any damage, since all the bullets went through it, and once they had finished all the bullets in the cartridges, Issei would Oplumeria the Omnitrix, thus changing transformation. Issei transformation. Clockwork, Issei shouted, before spinning the rope around his head and everything turning green, from Issei's point of view. All from the point of view of the criminals, who had reloaded their weapons and opened fire when Issei's rope began to turn. They saw how the metallic subject moved at a great speed that only left a blur, green and copper in color, in order to dodge all the bullets fired at the clonescient, who only walked calmly to dodge the bullets. And then gave a small blow to one of the subjects who were 5, which flew into a wall thus becoming unconscious, and then moved towards another and avoided the same bullets, which before he realized it, had been hit by Issei, to which he would fly out crashing into another wall, thus becoming unconscious. Do less, said Issei, before moving towards another criminal, taking him in his arms and throwing him to one of his companions, who did not stop his companion's course, to which they both crashed into a wall, thus becoming unconscious. 4 criminals less, only one left, said Issei before turning towards the other criminal. When he saw him, he became alarmed and pointed at him. What the hell are you? The criminal asked fearfully. I am Batman, Issei said jokingly, before heading towards the criminal and hitting him with a little more force, sending him in the direction of the door which the criminal went through, thus leaving the bank, where there were more criminals. Causing it to draw the attention of the undercover criminals who were aiming at the police, and they also turned their attention to the criminal who came out of the bank in that somewhat brutal way, from which a clockwork emerged calmly. Watching the criminals and police, how lucky I was able to eliminate the time of the transformations, although I haven't unlocked the master control, Issei said mentally, before delaying time, causing everything from Issei's point of view to turn green. After that, now running, being ridiculously fast from the point of view of those present, who could barely see him and could only see him clearly when Issei stood up, while Issei taking a light pole and tearing it off the base, would move where the criminals were and count them all, then take the light pole and bend it around the criminals, who were hit by Issei, thus rendering them unconscious. And then time returned to normal. But that it is enough, I leave you, friend, said Issei before pressing the dial of the Omnitrix, housed in his chest, thus being surrounded by a green light, which faded in a second, showing a pterodactyl, with humanoid characteristics, which had a backpack on its back. Issei transformation. Astrodactyl Bok Issei roared, before extending 2 wings from his backpack, and a flame came out of it, pointing to the ground, showing that it was actually a jetpack, and then he left the place at great speed, thus leaving the criminals unconscious and the police officers surprised. Time after. Issei could be seen sitting on the couch in the main room of his house, while watching television, which was showing the news of how he had sold out to the bank robbers, although no one knew that he was those creatures. Then his sister Canny arrived, a brown-haired girl a shade lighter than her brothers, and unlike him her eyes were brown, with a big chest. Not so exaggerated nor something little, from the point of view of men who were not perverted, he was perfect, with a body that seemed delicate and cared for, and with a waist that almost all women would like to have. What are you doing, pervert? Canny said with disgust. Nothing, just watching the news, Issei replied with a smile, watching television. And what are they giving? Canny asked somewhat curiously. They are reporting a new arrest by the police, who arrested some bank criminals, said Issei still watching the television. And that's not out of this world, said Canny with some arrogance, starting to leave. The thing is that those guys with powers helped arrest the criminals, said Issei, with a small smile, about to change the television channel. Step aside, useless pervert, said Canny, pushing Issei with her right arm and snatching the remote control with her left hand, to which the Omnitrix would let out a beep, which was heard by Issei, but not by Canny. Hey? What was that? Looks at the Omnitrix. Omnitrix, what happened? Issei asked mentally. Unknown DNA found, scanning mode interrupted, uncatalogued DNA, the Omnitrix informed its wearer. What? But if she's human, Ben, what happened? Issei asked Ben, if he knew that the Omnitrix was referring to his sister. Your sister probably has something in her body. The Omnitrix detected the unknown DNA when she touched you with her left arm. That means whatever or whoever it is over there, Ben said to his reincarnation with an analytical tone. That has to be known. I'll see what it is later, Issei said mentally, as he got up from the ground. I'm leaving. Bye, Issei said like that, sister, as he left. Aha, Canny said without interest as she watched TV. That same night. Issei could be seen in his room, which was practically unpainted, with a bed and a small piece of furniture to put his clothes on, a light bulb on the ceiling, next to a night light that was on the small piece of furniture, which is next to the bed. He had activated the Omnitrix and selected a specific alien. Then pressed the core of the Omnitrix and been enveloped in a green light, and it faded in a second, showing a chameleon the size of a child, with 3 eyes, which were of different colors, red, green and blue. His skin was a pale violet, along with it he had spots of a darker tone, along with the top of his head and back were black. They had 4 black claws on each hand. What stood out was an elegant green and white suit and a black cobra, where the Omnitrix dial was on his left wrist. Issei transformation. Chameleon, Issei said in a low whisper, while he camouflaged himself with his surroundings, almost seeming invisible, and then he left his room while climbing the wall. Once outside his room he went to his sister's. When he arrived he opened the door, thus entering Canny's room, where he saw his sister in her bed. He looked at the room without giving it importance, to go to the brunette older than him, where he took her left arm delicately and then made the dial of the Omnitrix. Unknown DNA detected, initiating scanning mode. The Omnitrix reported through Issei's mind, at which a ray would come out of the Omnitrix dial, which passed through the entire hand and left forearm of the brown-haired girl, who had not noticed her surroundings. Unknown alien DNA scanned and unlocked in playlist number 7, the Omnitrix reported to Issei. Okay, now what monkeys, he thought as he left his sister's room. Chapter 3. Omnitrix. Issei narrates. What the hell is this? Great, my whole life is great, and if you didn't realize this is sarcasm size, what the hell is this? Touches it, what the hell is this gauntlet? For your information, I have a name, did you know? Said a voice coming from the gauntlet. What the hell, I said before falling out of my bed. Hey, calm down, or you'll attract the attention of the other inhabitants of this house, said the gauntlet on my left arm. Wait a second, that was where the Omnitrix was. Where the hell is the Omnitrix? I asked, upset. Watch me carefully and you will find it, the gauntlet told me, and as I calmed down and looked closely at it, I saw with astonishment how the symbol of the intergalactic step was above the hand. But what? I asked, astonished. Ahaha, I see you're amazed, but first things first, I don't have a name yet, but if you want call me Omnidrag or Dragtrix, whichever you like best, the gauntlet on my left arm told me, which was called Omnidrag or Dragtrix, even though I liked Omnidrag better. Okay, Omnidrag, could you tell me what you are? I asked curiously. I am a sacred gear, to be exact, a longinus, the gauntlet told me calmly. And what is that? I asked curiously. The sacred gear is a miracle created by the God of the Bible, made specifically to perform miracles in the world, and a longinus are the most powerful sacred gears, with the aim of killing divine beings, Omnidrag explained calmly. I see, and where did you come from? I asked curiously. I come from your sister. When you scanned her left arm, you scanned the DNA of Drag, the Red Dragon Emperor. He is a longinus, and your sister is the carrier of it, explained Omnidrag with simplicity. About my sister, wait, why does she have Drag? I asked curiously. Only humans can have sacred gear, although angels, fallen angels and demons can have them, but that is through the reincarnation of each species. Let me explain, if a human with sacred gear dies or is about to do so, angels, fallen angels and demons can reincarnate them, but only in their respective species, Omnidrag explained. I see, I said calmly. Storyteller. An Issei could be seen on top of a building just like yesterday. He had been opening with Omnidrag, or as he was called, Dragtrix. He opened almost all day. Apparently Drag's version of the Omnitrix. He did not exactly have the memory of the original, but he did have the experience, some other moment in history and information about the supernatural world, which Issei was grateful for. And now what? Said Dragtrix from Issei's mind, since he had changed places with the Omnitrix. Well, usually what I do since a year ago, be a hero, Issei said to get up and jump off the building. What are you doing, damn suicidal, Dragtrix shouted to see what Issei had done, who was calmly and disinterestedly selecting an alien. Doing what I do best, he reported while pressing the core of the Omnitrix. Being a hero, Issei shouted while being enveloped by a green light. Jet ray was the roar of Issei, who was flying above the buildings. Issei transformation. So with this you mean the transformations, said Dragtrix in amazement. That's right, Issei said, looking down at those below him looking for some problem. Time after. You could see in Issei with his face covered with a scarf and with the hood of a red sweatshirt on, he saw how some thieves were obviously looking for the perfect car to steal. After all, he was looking in every window the cars had. Seeing this, Issei got a little angry, even though he got excited, since he could try a new transformation, which Ben had unlocked at 23 years old. And the thieves continued and continued, until in the distance they saw a sports car, which caught their complete attention. Hey, look at that car over there, he said as he walked towards the vehicle. It's incredible, said another of the three. This will be worth hundreds of thousands, we have to take it, said the third thief, approaching the car, and then began to grope it, after which the car would open instantly. Apparently it had no lock or key, said the thief as he opened the door completely, got in and sat down. It seems so, he said as he entered through the other door. Start it, said the other, climbing into the back of the vehicle. I'm on it, he said, about to start cutting and combining the cables to make the car start, but then he saw that the keys were in the ignition. Apparently the owner is a complete imbecile, said the one next to him. I agree with that, said the one behind the wheel, before starting the vehicle and starting to drive. Come on guys, did you really think stealing the car would be that easy, said a voice coming from the car's radio, which began to drive itself. What the hell? Said the one behind, while he tried to open the door, but the lock and key of the door would immediately be put on, thus preventing him from escaping. The same thing happened with the other doors. Amity hits the glass with a crowbar, but it wouldn't break. "Let us go, you bastard," said the man behind the wheel who was trying to free himself, but it seemed like the steering wheel was not attached to the car. "Sorry, but no, they are thieves who must be arrested, and by the way, don't even think about calling me a bastard, since I have a name," said the voice on the radio simply. "And that name would be stupid," said the thief on the steering wheel angrily. "Of course not, that's not my name, it's Decimus Prime," said the voice before the car turned into a lonely place in the city, so that the front of the car would open and the thieves would fly out, so that the car itself would stop and its parts would begin to move and relocate, thus transforming the sports car into what seemed to be a large robot. "What the hell," said the thief, who had previously been in the back of the car. "How is this possible?" said the one who once stood next to the driver of the car. "What are you?" asked the one at the wheel, asking the most obvious question. He points to the dial of the Omnitrix that is there on his forehead, which surprised and alarmed the thieves. "I am that vigilante who has the ability to transform into different forms, but let's leave that aside. His left hand becomes a blaster and he rests on his right knee. I'll tell you once. If I see you steal other people's cars, I swear that nothing will remain of you," said Decimus Prime, while pointing his blaster from which a rather threatening green light came out at the thieves, who were scared. "Do you understand?" he asked menacingly. "If we already understood, we won't do it again," said the one at the wheel who seemed to be the boss of the three. "Okay, well, you better," he said as he turned into a car, then skidded, causing smoke to rise, and then left the place at high speed. "What the hell was that?" asked one of the three thieves. "I don't know either," said the leader of the three. "But Decimus Prime." He was driving through the streets until he was enveloped in a green light, after parking in a place where no one would see him, and after a second the light faded away, showing none other than Issei Haidu. "It wasn't bad, but why didn't you arrest them?" Omnitrix asked Issei. "For the simple reason that I was feeling good today, apart from that there were no Circa police, and I couldn't take them to the police station just like that, since I didn't have any evidence," Issei said to Omnitrix. "And what if you do something, I don't know how, some cameras, so you could see what's happening in the city?" Omnitrix suggested to Issei, who nodded with a complexion. "You're right, and I already know what to do. Besides, I could also do another experiment that I have," said Issei before activating the Omnitrix, selecting which alien and finally pressing the Omnitrix dial, thus being enveloped by a green light. Issei XLR8. He lowers his visor. "I think I'm done for today. It would be better to go home, since it's not until 10 at night," said Issei before running out of the place at high speed. Chapter 4. Projects. Storyteller. It was night. On the night ground you could see how you should when a shooting star passed at high speed. Apart, you could see an Issei with his simple clothes, the one from the prologue walking through a junk dump. You could see the different mechanical and electronic devices everywhere, and they would be used by the brown-haired man. Let's see, what can I do first?" Issei asked himself while looking for an alien to use. "How are the cameras?" said Omnitrix from the Omnitrix. "Not for that, I already have an idea of how to do it and what they will be like, so for that I need more things, and it will take me longer, apart from that I would have to go into a laboratory." "Oh," said Issei without finishing his sentence. "Create your own Omnitrix," finished saying with excitement. "Haha, then that's what I'll do," Issei said as he pressed the core of the Omnitrix from which a menu came out. "Where are you?" "By Omnitrix," he said while searching. "Here you are," Issei informed, and then selected it, and the Omnitrix was wrapped in a green light, which faded away in a second, showing the aforementioned version of the Omnitrix. "I thought the Omnitrix only had the other form," Omnitrix said in surprise. "Not really, although I would like to give him another one, and besides that one of my projects is the function between the Omnitrix and Ultimatrix," said Issei simply. "What is the Ultimatrix?" Omnitrix asked curiously. "The version of the Omnitrix that allows the user to evolve the selected alien to its 1,000,000-year-old version, perhaps less or more. This is done through a simulation which turns out to be in the respective world of the species, added to the fact that the alien is a completely aggressive one. Where copies of the selected alien will fight against each other, and the strongest and the one that is evolved into its final form will be the one the user will transform into," Issei reported, and then crossed the X and was enveloped by a green light, which faded away the second. Issei transformation. XLR more, Issei roared excitedly. "Wow, is it a fusion?" Omnitrix asked in surprise. "Yes, that's what the Omnitrix does. It fuses 2 DNAs of each species and combines them into one, which has 50% of each alien," Issei responded calmly, and then began to run at a great speed of 800 km per hour until reaching the forest. "Let's work," Issei said before his hands turned into drills and then began to drill the wall of a hill, which had exposed stone. "Time after." "Ready," said an Issei inside a large room apparently made of diamond. Next to him were several technological and mechanical products. "That was fast," said Omnitrix. "Fast? It practically took me about 3 hours," Issei complained with a little annoyance. Sorry, but I don't know how to tell time properly," said Omnitrix. The Omnitrix has a digital clock, he reported, to turn it around towards technological products. Now I have to work with Ultra T, Grey Matter, and Jury Rig. I can do what I want, said Issei before crossing his arms in X and being enveloped by a green light. Issei transformation. Uprig Issei said the name of the transformation while taking the technological products. I put this here and this over here, Uprig said while building. Some minutes later. I'm not doing badly, said Issei, still transformed into Uprig, while he saw his latest creation. I'm actually surprised, Draketrix said sincerely. Me too, but oh well, I'd better get on with my work, he said, and then began to build again. Later. Right now Issei turned into Uprig was working with a machine which was being improved by himself to then separate and show a machine that was obviously several times more futuristic than the one on Earth. Okay, now to clone Ultra T's DNA, Issei said as he brought his hand to the Omnitrix dial and turned it, only to be enveloped in a green light. Issei Ultra T. After that, he directed his right hand to a space in the middle of the machine to then be wrapped by a metal plate. He let out a sigh to calm himself. I hope this doesn't hurt, Issei said to himself nervously. It's going to hurt like hell, Ben informed his reincarnation. Thanks for scaring me more, Issei said with a sarcastic and angry tone. And if you have mental damage, can I keep your body? Asked Draketrix curiously. No, I'm not crazy to give it to you, he said, and then began to press some buttons on the machinery and finally lower a small lever, thus activating the machine. Here we go, huh? Nothing happened. It seems that I'm Ekku. Damn, it's starting to hurt. Oh no, it hurts more and more. Damn, it hurts like hell now, Issei said, but he screamed at the last part while desperately trying to get his hand out of the machine. Don't be a sissy, said Draketrix with disinterest. Shut up, Issei shouted in pain and anger. Time after. Sniff, why sniff did I do that? Sniff, Issei said between sobs and curled up in a ball in a corner of the room, holding his right hand. Oh, come on, are you a faggot? Draketrix complained with a little annoyance. Shut up, Motherbicker, Issei shouted angrily. A few seconds later, several minutes. Well, it doesn't hurt like it used to, said an Issei in his human form, with a definitive version of the Omnitrix, the one when he was 16, while he saw 3 containers with a black material that had green lines. So these are the Ultra T DNA samples? Draketrix asked curiously. Yes, these are the samples of Ultra T. Now take one of them. With these samples I will create the chambers, said Issei. Then he directs towards the same machine from where he extracted Ultra T's DNA, which was changing shape in the same way as Decimus Prime. And now what? Ben asked curiously. This machine will reprogram the DNA. It would be like giving a task to a computer. Apart from that, it will give the shape to the cameras. Along with it will insert something similar to a chip, which will make them connect to the Omnitrix, which will give me the option to see through the cameras whenever I want, said Issei simply. Not a bad idea, very good boy, he said and congratulated Ben. Thank you, Issei thanked with a smile, while he put the cylinder with the galvanic mechamorphic DNA in a hole with the same shape as the cylinder, and now I just have to program the DNA, Issei said, and then began to press the buttons on a screen. Some minutes later. A small bubble robot moved across the room on its 7 cylindrical legs, which were separate from its original body, but it repeatedly collided with some of the objects in the room. I've never seen so much poop together, said Draketrix on Issei's left arm while looking at the bubble robot. Hey, that's an offense to me, Issei complained with great anger. Stop fighting already, said Ben somewhat tired. Okay, but leaving that aside, Omnidrake tests if you can see through it, Issei asked calmly. Okay, I'm doing it, said Draketrix, while the Omnitrix symbol on him was shining less. Yes, I can see through it, reported Draketrix, while his vision was divided into 2, one was on Issei's body and the other on the bubble robot, which was a robotic vision, which allowed it to store information and scan the area. Great, it works, I'm so glad. After all, copying the DNA hurt like hell, Issei said as he ran his left hand through his right hand. Works perfectly, Ben said happily. Yes, although it lacks some things, I would like it not to collide with anything. I probably connected them with the Omnitrix AI, apart from the fact that it is one. I think that cloning Ditto's DNA would help me with that, and I send the fact that they would be connected to each other. Apart from that, I would like to give it more ability. I think that making it invisible and being intangible would help them in their work. Apart from that, people would not see them, Issei said thoughtfully. Ghost's DNA would help you with that, so get to cloning the DNA, Draketrix said. Okay, although I'm not going to do it like I did with Ultra T, said Issei, to touch the cover of the Omnitrix, at which point the core would come out and show the menu. After that, he would select an option and then place his left hand on a plate from which rods would emerge which began to scan the Omnitrix. This will take time, Issei said, taking a chair, then putting it next to the table and sitting on it. 30 minutes later. Splix and Ditto and Octonurite ghostly DNA have already been copied, said a voice coming from the machine that was scanning the Omnitrix. Hey. He starts to wake up. Damn, I fell asleep, Issei said while rubbing his right eye. Then he gets up and takes two cylinders, one had more or less the appearance of Ditto and the other also with the difference that the appearance was that of a ghost. After that he would put them in the same hole where he had put the Ultra TDNA, then he would go for the robot and put it in a compartment which would close instantly. I hope a killer robot doesn't come out from there, Issei said, and then began to wait. After a few minutes the machine would beep, and then the compartment where the robot was located would open, showing that it had changed shape. The tone came out. Not bad, he said while taking it in his hands. Now I just have to connect you with the Omnitrix AI. Approaching him to the Omnitrix, connect your AI to the camera robot, said Issei with a smile. Right away Issei-san, said the Omnitrix and then followed Lada's order, to which it would beep for about 5 seconds. The artificial intelligence of the Omnitrix and the camera robot are now connected, said the voice of the Omnitrix monotonously. Okay, I think this is enough for today, another day I will continue with my other work, said Issei, putting the bubble robot on the table. Chapter 5. New Omnitrix. Storyteller. Today was the day in which the Omnitrix would be updated. Right now Issei could be seen in his laboratory base, which had the Omnitrix core in his left hand, and in his right hand, he was holding a device similar to a screwdriver, but in a certain way more futuristic, which gave off sparks when the tip of it touched the Omnitrix core. Is that it? Asked Draketrix curiously. Nope, it's not there yet, I still needed a party, points behind him with his thumb, where there was a machine creating another core for the Omnitrix, to then continue modifying the core of the Omnitrix. That machine is working on another core for the Omnitrix, obviously empty, that's why it modified this one, said Issei and then took another tool, and then touched the bottom of the core. Which caused it to compress into a small disc, with one of the sides having the symbol of intergalactic peace. At that and precisely by the power of the script, the machine that created another core for the Omnitrix would finish building it, to which Issei would get up in the chair that is and go to it, where he would take the core and insert the disc that was formerly the core of the Omnitrix into a slot that the new core of the Omnitrix had, to which the two pieces would merge into one, causing the symbol of intergalactic peace in the new core of the Omnitrix to release a great and powerful glow that followed Issei for a few minutes. He covers his eyes hell a little more and he went blind, Issei complained, while he regained his vision seeing the core of the Omnitrix. Now the core of the Omnitrix was green, with black lines and had a black dial. When Issei saw it he was surprised, then he took it in the best way and brought it closer to the Omnitrix, which he slid the cover of it, showing where the core of the Omnitrix was supposed to be, to which Issei would put the core in its corresponding place so that it would then spin a few times, so that its green color would change to blue. Am gives himself a faceban. I forgot that now it has to be recalibrated, said Issei with annoyance, then pressed the core of the Omnitrix, causing it to be inserted and the lid to cover it. Well, now we have to wait. How long would it take to recalibrate? Asked Draketrix curiously. Some hours, maybe 24, maybe less, otherwise I'll use it all day, Ben answered calmly. I see, well people will have to wait. Do you think they can wait a day? Said Draketrix somewhat thoughtfully. Obviously yes, apart from the fact that the bubble robots will protect them in the shadows, said Issei, taking a green jacket which had a black line on the right side of the body, with a number 10 on the right side of the chest. So that he would then put it on and leave his laboratory, thus passing through a hologram of the ancient wall of the hill, meeting the chronocycle, which was once used by Ben. Obviously it was not the original, and was only a copy of the original. It lacked the ability to travel in time, although in itself, it did not bother him at all, since he could use clockwork to travel in time. But leaving that aside, he would get on the motorcycle and start driving it, going directly to his city, while pressing some buttons on a digital panel, which caused the chronocycle to camouflage itself with its surroundings to such an extent that it seemed to be invisible. Time after. Issei was parked in an alley, then got off, but not before touching a switch that would make the chronocycle release 4 hooks which were directed towards the upper parts of the alley walls, making the bike hang, thus preventing anyone from finding it. I would look at the Omnitrix, which showed the clock symbol in a blue color. I hope you update quickly, Issei said, and then began to leave the alley. You know, now that I see you trust the Omnitrix a lot, Ben said thoughtfully from Issei's mind. I trust it, although I always keep in mind that it's just a watch. I have the knowledge and experience to fight without it, but I would like to have it now, since while I wait for it to update, it tells me that there isn't a guy raping a woman on the other side of the city, or that they're robbing a bank right now, Issei said frustrated. Haha, wow kid, you really have the spirit of a hero, but leaving that aside, do you remember me telling you about how I'm part alien? Ben said enthusiastically. If I remember, you told me that you were only part Anodite and I was your reincarnation. I got your DNA running through my bandages, which made me an Anodite too, but you warned me that only the women of the family could use it, Issei thought said to Ben. Exactly, but there is a chance you could use the Anodite power on yourself, although I don't know if you could become one, Ben said excitedly. How would that be? He asked confused, and weren't only the women of the family supposed to be able to transform into an Anodite? Issei asked again with confusion. If I'm honest, I don't know, but I can tell you something, and that is that the Celestial Sapien are changing the universe all the time, and there is the slightest possibility that they have changed it so that only the women of the family can use the Anodite power on us, Ben explained calmly. I see, so I'll try to get home, Issei said as he walked towards his house. Time after. Once Issei arrived home, he began to climb the stairs to the second floor, stopping next to his sister who was heading towards the stairs to go down, but she was distracted with her phone. She wouldn't notice that she had missed a step, to which she would refar, I think that's how it's written, if not correct me, thus letting out a small scream. The witch Issei in a quick movement went to her and held her by the waist, thus preventing her from falling and causing the brunette to blush slightly. What are you doing? Candy asked a little nervously and blushed. Prevent you from falling and dying for the simple reason that your skull would break from hitting the stairs, said Issei Simplica, putting it back in its place, then turning and going to his room. DSK, you stupid show-off, Candy complained in a whisper, along with that with an annoyed tone. But Issei. He himself had entered his room and put himself in the lotus position on his bed, as Ben had told him to do, so that he could then concentrate, channeling his mana into his chest, so to speak. And so it was for several hours, until Issei felt something come out of his own chest, which turned out to be a green sphere, which was descending little by little, but Issei would put his hands under the sphere, thus preventing it from continuing to descend. I did it in some ways, now I just have to practice more. He turns around looking at his alarm clock on the nightstand. It's already night, I'll just go eat and then I'll go to sleep, said Issei, and then looked at his wrist, which had the Omnitrix which was still recalibrating, to which Issei would let out a sigh of tiredness. The next day. Yue Ultra Picyon, huh? It's already daylight, looks at the time. HMNP, I fell asleep, looks at his left wrist. It finally updated, said Issei looking at his new Omnitrix. Haha, the design looks great on me, Issei said with pride. Wow, that looks good on you, said Draketrix as his glove formed on Issei's right arm. It turned out better than the one I had in mind, congratulations boy, Ben said proudly to Asia Issei. Haha, thanks Ben and Omnidrag, now we have to try it, said Issei with a big smile. Time after. It's about time for the Supreme Ones to return, said Issei to press the core of the Omnitrix, thus being enveloped by a green light. Issei transformation. Humongosaurus Issei roared as he raised his arms and struck a heroic pose with them, and now he pressed the dial on the Omnitrix. Supreme Humongosaurus Issei said, before beginning to turn into his supreme form. Issei, Humongosaur.Supreme. Supreme Humongosaurus Issei roared at the top of his lungs, while assuming the same pose as before. I didn't see this coming, Draketrix said in amazement. And this way is not the only one that will surprise you, said Ben with a big smile. Chapter 6. School Day. He turns off the alarm clock and turns around. Damn, and I wanted to sleep a little longer. He looks at the alarm clock and sees that it's 6:30, why the hell did it go off an hour and a half later, said a 16-year-old Issei with annoyance, while jumping out of his bed. That's how alarm clocks are, mate, those things are the devil's fault, they always go off an hour and a half later than they should, said Draketrix wisely. On top of that I have an exam today, said Issei as he quickly put on his clothes, then took his backpack and went to the first floor of his house. Where he found a coffee and a piece of toast, which he would take, then drink the coffee, which he did not like, and start eating the bread, then leave the house and head towards his school. I won't make it on time, and I don't even have time to go for the chronocycle, thought a desperate Issei. Use XLR8 to get there on time, said Draketrix simply. Okay, my friend, you have a good point, said Issei, and then went to an alley and activated the Omnitrix, then selected XLR8 and pressed the Omnitrix core. Issei XLR8. Then he would lower his visor and speed towards the school. A few seconds later. A flash of green was seen in an alley, which luckily had not been noticed, and precisely from that alley, a brown-haired boy came out and ran to the Kuo Academy, a school that was formerly only for girls, but it would become mixed a few months ago, something that seemed strange and at the same time stupid to Issei. After all, what was the point of doing that? Only men who would be perverted would go, since literally there are even most of the most beautiful girls in the city, and unfortunately his parents had enrolled him there, although he did not complain at all, since the school was one of the best. Time after. A few more minutes and I wouldn't have counted, said an Issei sitting on the grass and leaning his back against the wall of one of the school buildings. You should change that alarm clock, said Draketrix from Issei's mind. And I will plow it, I will definitely plow it, Issei said in a whisper, then heard some screams. To which he would turn his gaze, seeing how two boys were being chased by several girls, to which he would proceed to get up and go to where they were. Hello, he waves, thus gaining the attention of the girls and the two boys. Could you know what happened? Issei asked, looking at the group. Get out of here and stay out of here, said one of the girls rudely. If you go away now, this is none of your business anyway, you stupid pervert, said another angrily. You know what, you're right, it's none of my business. He turns around and starts walking, thus moving away from the girl stuck with two boys, but he would stop. But if what's happening here is what I'm thinking, it's better that you go with a teacher or with the one who's supposed to put order in the school, since if you hit him you'll get into bigger trouble. Bigger than the ones they too would get into seeing you in the locker room, said Issei calmly and then continued on his way, thus leaving two boys somewhat relieved and at the same time nervous and the group of girls somewhat surprised and thoughtful. Time skip. Issei was sitting on the ground and resting his back on a rock moraine while taking the shade of a tree. He was calm until Trix would warn him of something. Hey buddy, a red-haired girl is watching us, said Trix from Issei's mind. He turns his head everywhere but doesn't see anyone. I don't see anyone, Omnitrix, Issei said in a whisper, with some seriousness. In the window to your left of the building behind us, he informed cautiously, to which Issei would pay attention. When Issei turned his head back, he met the serious gaze of a beautiful red-haired girl with blue eyes and a big chest, who would look at him for a few more seconds, and then leave. How strange, Issei said simply. Don't even mention it to me, apparently you have a fan, said Trix with a funny tone. He shrugs his shoulders. If I'm honest, I don't care, if she proposes it to me I'll kindly reject it, said Issei and then left the place. After leaving the place he would go to the library, where he would begin to look for certain books. Partner might know why you're looking for magic books in your school's library, said Trix somewhat confused. It may sound cliché, but as the movies showed me, also the series and what Ben told me, is that in the school libraries, there is always at least one book that deals with magic and that has some spell in it, said Issei, while looking at the titles of the books, until he found one that didn't have a name. Apart from the fact that it was dark green with charcoal black details and edges of the same color. To which he would take it and take a look at it, finding what he was looking for. The book talked about several magical topics, including spells. After reading the little content that the book had, he would close his eyes and concentrate, barely feeling the essence of the mana in the book. Yes, this is a spell book. He looks at it carefully, apparently it was created by humans, Issei said in a whisper, and then retreated from the row of bookshelves. She would then go to the librarian and ask if she could take the book, to which the woman would look through it somewhat strangely and see that the book was not registered at the school, to which she would let out a sigh. Apparently it is not registered, perhaps it belongs to a student who left it here, said the librarian tiredly. It belongs to a friend of mine, she asked me to look for it for her, Issei said, feeling bad. After that tone he was lying to the woman in front of him. I see, well here you have it, you can take the young one. They give it to Issei-san, tell your friend not to forget her books, said the librarian with a kind smile. Why yes, thank you, he said as he took the achievement and walked away. Damn, I'll go to hell for this, I have to go, damn, I just lied to a craving, damn it, I'll burn in hell, said an Issei in panic as he walked. I think he's exaggerating, said a Trix with a drop of sweat. And I agree with Taigo, he literally stood up as if he had ended the lives of several people, said Ben, also with a drop of sweat. We'll have to calm him down, said Trix. Yep, Ben replied simply. Time after. Issei narrates. Uma Amano was the name of the girl who had invited me to go out. I don't know what happened, but I ended up having a rope, and don't think badly, it's not that I'm interested in her physique, but I love with all my heart that she's beautiful, but I noticed something in her hand, something I didn't like, added to the fact that by looking at her eyes, I could see a fake autism. So I accepted to see what she was up to, so right now I'm heading to where we should meet. Excuse me, but could you give me a few seconds of your time please? A girl had spoken to me with more than one brochure. Hey? Yes, sorry if you ignore me, it's just that I'm a little stressed and I have several things I have to think about, I said somewhat nervously as I turned around, putting us face to face. Oh well, I'm sorry if I'm bothering you, but I'll do this quickly. He gives me one of the pamphlets he had. This is a pamphlet from, he began to say, but at that point a shootout would start, at which point I would grab her and take her to a safe place. You better get out of here, I told him to go help more people and then go to an alley. Well, it's time to work, I said, and then activated the Omnitrix. Time skip. Well, at least it didn't take long, nothing that clockwork can't stop, haha, you understand, stop, since he can stop time I better not tell jokes, so leaving that topic aside, I headed to the park where Yuma was, who was waiting for me sitting on a park bench. Hello Yuma-chan, I greeted with a smile, although if I'm honest I don't like to put suffixes on names. Hey? She turns to see me. Hello Issei-kun, she said as she got up from her seat and walked towards her friend. Sorry if I'm late, there was a shooting while I was coming, I apologized while scratching the back of my head. Oh my god, Issei-kun, are you okay? He asked me with concern while he got closer to me. Yes, I'm fine, you don't have to worry about me Yuma-chan, I said calmly and with a trustworthy smile, to which she would calm down. Well, I'm glad you are, so takes my hand, can we have our date now? She asked me with a noticeable blush. Yeah, that would make my day, I said with a smile as she pulled me along to begin our date. After the date between Issei and Rainer, Yuma. I had a lot of fun, Issei-kun, Yuma told me with a smile, while bringing his hand closer to mine. I had a lot of fun today too, Yuma-chan, she said with a smile, as I turned to look at her. Of course, we're just here to see what he's up to, Trix told me with disinterest. But I just ignored him while I watched as Yuma went to a water fountain. Issei-kun, could you do me a favor? He asked me in a somewhat innocent tone while he turned towards me and walked in my direction. Of course, Yuma-chan, what would that favor be? I asked him with a smile, his face had become darker, to which I put myself on alert. You could die for me, he told me while his voice changed to a more sinister and less innocent one, along with it he had gotten very close to me. I let out a sigh, and here we go, and I thought I could have the day off, I said as I kicked her and jumped back. Storyteller. What's wrong, Issei-kun? Yuma said, surprised and scared. Stop pretending that you are a fallen angel or a demon, said Issei looking at her seriously. She lets out a laugh. It seems you've already realized, said Yuma, and then a pink flash, which caused her clothes to be destroyed, thus revealing her beautiful body. Then a kind of black liquid formed another kind of somewhat revealing clothing, and with it also came out some large black wings on the upper part of Yuma's back. Okay, you're a fallen angel, so let me guess, you're coming to kill me because I'm a threat to you, said Issei, while a green flash formed in his left hand, which faded and showed the Omnitrix. Wow, I've never heard of a sacred gear like yours, Issei-kun, Yuma said maliciously, while forming a red energy spear. You know that in a fight, there are more blows than talks, Issei reported while he was enveloped by a green light, which faded, showing a humanoid being with plant characteristics. Issei transformation. Swampfire, Issei roared as he got into a combat stance with his right hand as a fist and his left as a claw. So you are the subject of the transformations, Yuma said somewhat surprised, to which she would also get into a combat pose with the sharp tip of the spear pointing towards Issei. That's right, but that doesn't matter now, said Issei as he launched himself at Asia Yuma, who would also launch herself at Asia Issei. Yuma would manage to pierce Issei in the stomach, going through it completely, but Issei would not flinch, then throw a punch with his right hand to Yuma's face, which he landed, and then place his left hand on the stomach of the same, to which he would release methane, and then release a spark, which caused a huge explosion, which sent Yuma flying, which would crash into a wall. Thus leaving her in a very bad state. That was easy, Asia Yuma begins to walk, while regenerating still. I don't understand why you wanted to kill me. He sees how she looks up to see him and growl, to which Issei would raise an eyebrow, and I see that now you want to kill me more eagerly, a burr. The burr, he puts his hand on his chin. One of the reasons is because I hurt you, and the other would be that you and other people are planning something very bad, isn't it like that, Yuma? After all, you and the other magical beings know very well that I am one of those who likes to beat bad people, like you said, Issei analytically and with a somewhat funny tone. Making quotation marks with his hands when he said the girl's name. Damn bastard, he creates a magic spear and throws it at Issei's head, thus piercing it and causing Issei's body to fall backwards. Ha, and you were supposed to be a big threat. He gets up in a lot of pain. Hell, I better get out of here before someone comes, said Yuma while making a magic circle so that he could then cross it, thus leaving the place. But what she didn't know was that Issei's head was beginning to regenerate, and once it finished regenerating it would stand up, then return to its original form. Damn, that hurt a little. Looks at the Omnitrix. Hey Omnidrag, did you manage to scan his DNA? Issei asked his partner. If I succeeded, now we can track her, said Drag. Trix appeared on Issei's left arm. Okay, give the order to the bubble robots to follow her and see what she and those with her do, said Issei, then activated the Omnitrix and began searching for the alien he wanted to transform into. But in that a magic circle would be present from where a red hair would come out, which would be recognized by Issei. Hey? Isn't that the girl who's been watching me at school? Issei asked, somewhat confused. If so, he returns to the interior of the Omnitrix. It would be better if you covered yourself so he doesn't recognize you, said Trix cautiously. Okay, he would be enveloped by a green light, thus drawing the attention of the red-haired girl. Could you tell me what you're doing here? Issei asked with his distorted voice. When the girl turned around she saw a man, probably about 16 years old, wearing a black and white suit with metal parts and a green scarf. She was wearing a cargo of the same black and white tones, along with it she was wearing a black trench coat with white touches and with the symbol of an Herglis on the back. The girl even noticed that the trench coat, which reached her calves, also had a hood. You are Omniverse, the girl said with surprise. That's right, Issei nodded, but I'd like to know what a demon is doing here. Issei asked, somewhat confused. I see that you already know what I am. He releases his demon wings, which resemble those of a bat. Let me introduce myself. My name is Riaz Gremory, the younger sister of Riaz began, but would be interrupted by Issei. Okay, I'm very sorry to stop you in your presentation, but today I don't have much time. A fallen angel tried to kill a boy with sacred gear, and I have my suspicions right now, so every second that passes is one that I lose not being able to follow her and see what she's up to, Issei reported, somewhat hurried, and by the way his left forearm transformed into one that was apparently metal. Of a red color, with gray fingers which look like claws. I hate those who spy, Issei said, and then pointed with his left arm to a corner of a house, and then shot water at a price that went through the corner, thus making those who were violating surveillance come out of their hiding place. Hey, what's wrong? Said a girl that Issei recognized perfectly. Annie, Issei whispered, but it would be heard by all the girls. Do you know me? Asked the aforementioned, looking at him cautiously. Yes, even you know me, but you are so stupid, arrogant, conceited and diva, to realize who I am, with or without a mask, Issei said normally, thus angering his sister, from which a gauntlet formed on her left hand, something similar to Iron Man's. Wow, but you have Iron Man's gauntlet, Issei mocked, as he returned his arm to normal and activated the Omnitrix. Damn bastard, said Candy, starting to walk towards him, but she would be interrupted by Riaz. Annie, calm down, this is not the time for fights, Riaz said with authority. Their president is right, but anyway, hits the Omnitrix core transforming into XLR8. I have to go, and by the way, Miss Gremory, I don't accept the proposal you were going to give me to join your entourage, Issei informed, lowering his visor, then leaving the place at great speed, leaving everyone present surprised. Chapter 7. Goodbye Ben Tennyson. Storyteller. How did you know that he was going to offer you to be part of his entourage? Trix asked Issei, who was running at great speed through the streets of the city, transformed into XLR8. Simple, what demon would present himself in a very respectful way without wanting something in return, Issei said calmly. You have a very good point, but leaving that aside, the bubble bots have already managed to track you. If that is her name, Trix reported something serious. Okay, give him the order to monitor them at all costs, at least let it be 3 of them, Issei said seriously. Okay, and by the way, I'll tell you something, I'm glad you left that confidence and some arrogance 6 months ago, said Trix happily. Don't remind me, I was just plain stupid, Issei said somewhat annoyed. Haha, I know, I'm just reminding you so you don't become like that again, said Trix in a joking tone. Aha, yes, I still remember Ben's scolding, said Issei, which I would tremble a little. Hahaha, yes, I remember, he gave you a lesson with forearms, said Trix between laughs. Ha, how funny, said Issei annoyed. It was hilarious to me, haha, said Trix wittily. Never, Issei replied and then increased his speed. I'm after. What a day, Issei said tiredly, throwing himself onto his bed. Don't complain, Trix said normally. You are not the one who has to move your body and be pierced by spears of light, Issei said somewhat annoyed, while closing his eyes. Okay, my friend, there you have a good point, partner. He doesn't receive a response from Issei, partner. He asked, trying to get the attention of the brunette, who was deeply asleep. It seems he fell asleep, it would be best to do the same, said Trix before falling asleep. Issei's mental space. He had modified his mental space to a great world full of vegetation, with mountains and so on, having a great futuristic building embedded in a mountain, and that building was where our protagonist goes. And why did you call us Ben? Asked a confused Issei, with a small lizard with a greenish armor covering his entire body. I would have asked the same thing, but the boy got there first, said Trix somewhat sleepily, who turned out to be the armored lizard. I remind you that I am 16 years old, and you are a little over 2 years old, Issei reported somewhat annoyed. To be exact, 2 years, 3 months, 17 days, 21 hours, 48 minutes, and 39 seconds, Trix reported precisely. He looks at his Omnitrix and sees that what Trix said was true. Wow, that's exact, Ben said, somewhat surprised. I am a master of time, said Trix gracefully. Hahaha, that was funny, but leaving that aside, why did he call us Ben? Issei asked, somewhat confused. Yes, I had forgotten. He puts his hand on Issei's right shoulder. My time has come, Issei, it's time for me to leave, Ben said sadly. He lets out a sad sigh. I see, is there nothing I can do? Issei asked with some hope. Unfortunately not, I have to go back to the afterlife and reunite with my family and friends, Ben said in defeat. I know, at least I can say something. Gives Ben a hug. That it was the best thing in my life to have met you, said Issei with a smile and at the same time with sadness. The hug is in order, I'm glad about that, said Ben, who like Issei had a smile, although the sadness was noticeable. Well, if this is a farewell, I have to say that you're Ben. You have earned my respect and friendship, said Trix with a smile. Same here, Dragon, Ben said, bumping fists with Trix. It was a pleasure meeting you, Issei said while bumping fists with Ben. Same here, but don't think I'm going to leave without giving you another gift, Ben said with a smile. And those would be? Issei asked curiously. You have one right now in your hand, while you sleep, another one of them is Ben said as he takes Issei's hand where the Omnitrix was and begins to turn the dial of it. What are you doing? Issei asked confused. Do you remember I told you that I had blocked one of your alien transformations? Ben asked as the Omnitrix beeped. Yes, I remember and you told me not to even think about unlocking it, Issei said somewhat thoughtfully. That's right, and I'll unlock it for you now said Ben, while a hologram of a humanoid being with 3 horns on its head emanated from the Omnitrix. And this one is called? Issei asked seeing the new alien DNA. Alien X, this would be our most powerful transformation, but it still has another weakness, among them is that 3 personalities have to agree, since once converted you will find yourself with 2 other personalities, Ben informed enthusiastically. I see, once I'm awake I'll try it, Issei said somewhat excited. I give you permission but be careful, the other 2 personalities have to agree for Alien X to do something, that includes a simple movement like blinking Ben informed seriously. Okay, I'll keep that in mind, Issei said with a bit of seriousness. And I almost forgot, the gift you'll find outside you have to take care of at all costs, Asmuth the Asmuth of my alternate line entrusted it to me, he had asked me to secure it at all costs, and I trust you to take care of it, said Ben with a smile. Okay, I promise I'll take care of him, Issei said with determination. Okay boy, it's time for me to go, here are my memories he touches Issei's forehead you will see them every time you sleep, I would give them to you all at once, but you would have a mental breakdown, said Ben as he began to shine. Thanks Ben, I'm going to miss you, Issei said hugging Ben again. Same here Issei and before I forget, turn the dial on the Omnitrix Ben said as he was enveloped in a green light before disappearing. She sheds a tear I'm going to miss him, said Dragtrix wiping away the tear. Same here Issei said, also wiping away a tear. Well he lets out a sigh let's try Alien X said Dragtrix, while moving his tail from side to side. Bipolar Issei said with an expression that could not be described Saitama style. No, you said Dragtrix in a somewhat childish tone. He let out a sigh whatever, we better wake up now Issei said before disappearing in a flash of green. Time after. Issei could be seen on the top of a hill, which was hidden by several trees, although it could also be seen that it was just dawning. Well, let's try it said Issei looking at the silhouette of Alien X and then pressing the dial of the Omnitrix. Issei Alien X. Alien X Alien X Alien X was what Alien X himself said with Issei's voice, along with 2 other unknown voices. Inside Alien X. Where are we? Asked Dragtrix somewhat confused. And that he sees Issei who turned around and he himself saw Dragtrix, a gigantic green dragon, with armor of the same color that covered his entire body, even his wings, with several gems spread throughout each part of his armor, with a gigantic one on his chest where the symbol of intergalactic peace was, all of that gave him the appearance of a robot. I don't know Issei answered simply. Wow, but he is Tennyson's successor said a voice behind Dragtrix and Issei. They turned around and found 2 faces, one of a woman and the other of a man. Hey kid, nice to finally meet you in person, said the face of the woman on the left. HMNP, well I don't say the same thing said the face of the man on the right. Excuse me, but who are you? Issei asked, somewhat confused. Apparently Tennyson didn't tell you about us the man's face complained. Don't be like that, after all there was the possibility that he would try to unlock Alien X so we could meet each other justified the woman's face, but leaving that aside, it would be better if we introduced ourselves. I am Serena, the voice of love and compassion, said the face of the woman now known as Serena. And I am Bellicus, the voice of rage and aggression, and I hope you haven't forgotten it, said the man's face, with an annoyed tone. Okay, since you guys introduced yourselves, now we'll do it, my name is Issei Haidu Tennyson, said Issei with a smile. And I am Dragtrix, but if you like you can call me Omnidrag, said Dragtrix who, like Issei, had a smile. We know, after all you 2 are part of Alien X, Issei the voice of reason, and Dragtrix the voice of responsibility, said Serena with a slight smile. Chapter 8. Chatter between voices. Storyteller. How, I didn't understand, I'm the voice of reason. Issei asked, somewhat confused. That's right, you are the voice of reason, one of the 3 voices of Alien X, but with Omnidrag, there are now 4 voices that Alien X has Serena explained kindly. And why so many voices? Asked Dragtrix. All the voices of Alien X have to agree on something to do it, for example if you want to recreate the universe the 4 of us have to agree, Bellicus explained simply. I see, said Dragtrix as he brought one of his claws to his venton. And so for me to return to normal, we all have to be in agreement? Issei asked curiously. Not exactly, she said calmly. How would that be? Issei asked confused. When Ben was the bearer of the Omnitrix in ancient times, we had made a deal, Bellicus said with a frown. And what's the deal about? Dragtrix asked with interest. It consists in a certain way, in levels of power, she said serenely with a smile. Could you explain it to us? Issei asked. Of course, clears his throat. The deal consisted of the action Ben wanted to do with Alien X and how many votes and acceptance he needed for that if he wanted to return to his original form or change to another, along with being able to move Alien X's body and one or two other things. He would only need his own vote, but to do more things, like move a mountain for example, you would need at least 2 votes, although you could do more things with 2 votes, for example create a galaxy or something smaller, explained Serena kindly. I see, Issei said with some astonishment. Hey, since you followed the thing about creating galaxies, I have some questions, said Dragtrix raising one of his arms. And those would be? Bellicus asked, raising an eyebrow. It may sound childish and off-topic, but God belongs to the Alien X species, asked Dragtrix curiously. That's right, but unfortunately he lost his earthly form, so to speak, she reported Serena. Earthly form? Issei asked, tilting his head to the side. You could say that Alien X is a 4-dimensional being or even more, depending on which dimension Celestial Sapien was born in. The earthly forms would be the form that every living being in this universe sees when they look at Alien X and the rest of their species, Bellicus explained calmly. So they would be like an avatar in a game? Issei asked, trying to have a more fixed form of the explanation given. Exactly, Bellicus responded dryly. But as I understand it, God had a form how to put it more human, said Dragtrix, somewhat confused. That's why when he created the universe he modified his body, unfortunately making it the weakest, but with the image he wanted for the beings of this world, she explained serenely, calmly and kindly. I see, Dragtrix said in a somewhat thoughtful tone. So he's dead? Issei asked. Clearly not, he only lost the body he used to be in this dimension. Most likely he is taking on a new earthly form, only more powerful and resistant. Doing that takes a long time, Bellicus explained with disinterest. I see, Issei said. Any other questions? Serena asked with curiosity. Yep, I have more, Dragtrix informed with a smile. Time after? That would be all. Bellicus asked with a raised eyebrow. More or less, I would like to make a modification to myself, Dragtrix reported. And that would be which is Issei, Bellicus and Serena asked at the same time. That's fair, he said in a whisper, then coughed falsely. I'd like to make an improvement and some modifications to my detection sense, Dragtrix said with a smile. Okay, but you still don't tell us which one, said Issei. I would like to improve its range, make it clearer and more precise, since I have problems identifying or differentiating between races. I can know which person is normal or supernatural, but I don't know very well how to distinguish them. Well, I do know how to differentiate angels from others, but not from demons, fallen angels and more supernatural beings. With the exception of Yakes and dragons, explained Dragtrix calmly. Apart from that, I would like to know precisely which sacred gear a person has, without having to see them, added Dragtrix. In other words, you want to be a censor? Issei asked directly. Yes, more or less like that, answered Dragtrix. I think so, for that you only need 2 votes, Serena informed kindly. Okay, well I vote yes, Issei said with a smile. I vote yes too, said Dragtrix before being enveloped by a violet light, which faded away within a second. Now your sensory abilities are supposed to have improved? Issei asked, looking at Serena and Bellicus. That's right, now you'll be able to distinguish supernatural people more easily and see people's sacred gears, she said serenely with a smile. Well, thank you, Dragtrix said with a smile. You're welcome, she said serenely with a smile. Whatever, Bellicus said disinterestedly. Well, I think we have to go now, since I remember there was an academy there, said Issei stretching. That's right, it actually starts in half an hour, Dragtrix reported with disinterest. Oh no, well see you next time, Serena and Bellicus, he said to be enveloped by a green light, along with Dragtrix. Out of Alien X. The same alien was enveloped in a green light, then faded away to show Issei in his human form. Well, that was interesting, said Issei walking to his chronocycle. That's right, who would say there were more beings like God, said Dragtrix from the Omnitrix. Well, that's something I didn't expect, at least the questions I had in my head have been answered, Issei said as he got on his chronocycle. That's right, he saw something in the back seat. Hey, did you bring it? Asked Dragtrix confused. That's right, after all Ben asked me to take care of her, said Issei turning around and seeing what was placed on the back seat. Chapter 9. Megawatts. Storyteller. And what are the fallen angels up to? Issei asked Dragtrix while driving his chronocycle. According to what I have seen through the bubble robots, they want to catch a certain Asia, reported Dragtrix. Don't you have a last name? Issei asked. Nope, they only say their first name, but not their last name, said Dragtrix with some displeasure. What exactly are they up to? Issei asked somewhat distrustfully. That Yuma, who is actually called Rainer, a low-level fallen angel, or however supernatural beings are classified, she and some friends, so to speak, seek to catch this Asia who possesses a sacred gear that allows her to heal any living being, both normal and supernatural, explained Draketrix calmly. I see, Issei said with a thoughtful tone. Let me know when they have detected her and tell me her location, and what are they looking for from her anyway? Issei ordered and asked, somewhat confused at the end. They seek to steal her sacred gear, which would kill her in the process. After that, one of them plans to absorb her sacred gear, which would make her or him more powerful, but it wouldn't be a big deal. Apparently they are very arrogant, who think that if they have that girl's sacred gear, they will become powerful, Draketrix reported with disinterest at the end. He lets out a tired sigh. I see, said Issei. Something's wrong? Asked Draketrix, somewhat worried. It's not a big deal, you'll have to, Issei said, activating the camouflage mode of his chronocycle, and then entering the city. I know when you're driving me crazy, said Draketrix. Okay, it just occurred to me that supernatural beings are hypocrites, Issei said disinterestedly. What do you mean? Asked Draketrix, confused. Well, they say that we humans are trash and filth in this world, but they are the ones who kill humans, which would be the case of demons and fallen angels, who think they are better than everyone and such things. Practically being like that does not make them better than humans, but even worse, said Issei, while parking the chronocycle and getting off of it. So that it would then hook onto the wall and go up. You have a good point, but there is no way for them to change. If humanity proves to be worse than them, they will only believe themselves better than them, and if humanity proves to be better than them, they will retaliate, said Draketrix with some wisdom. You're right about that, Issei said from his mind. That same night, Issei was at the top of a building, watching as people and vehicles passed below them, but then he saw a boy talking on the phone, but something was strange. Hey Omnitrix, aren't Cabber phones supposed to have stopped being produced? Issei asked in his vigilante suit, watching the boy head to an alley. That's right, buddy, but I think you're being very paranoid, said Draketrix, watching as Issei began to follow the boy. Do you think? Issei asked, watching the boy get into a small car that was more technological than it should be. Okay, that car is definitely not from Earth, said Draketrix in surprise. Same here, Issei said before jumping and being enveloped by a green light. Issei transformation. Forearms, Issei roared as he fell in front of the car, thus blocking the exit from the alley. What the hell, the boy said as he grabbed his phone, which was connected to a metal backpack on his back. Then the same phone would transform into a firearm, which fired a burst of energy. Oh no, said Issei, receiving the shot, thus moving out of the way, and then falling electrocuted to the ground. After that, the boy would start the vehicle and leave the alley at high speed. Genius, Draketrix said sarcastically. Damn, I didn't see that coming, Issei said as he stood up, then pressed the dial on the Omnitrix. Issei XLR8. After transforming, he would lower his visor and begin to follow the boy's vehicle, who was red-haired. He would tire him out and stand on the left side of the vehicle. Hello friend, he greets with his left hand. Could you stop, since from what I understand you are someone very suspicious, said Issei in a joking tone, then moved to the left to avoid an attempted run over. So that after the criminal took his weapon phone again, he began to design energy blasts, which were dodged by XLR8. Okay, buddy, you asked for it, Issei said before jumping to the right, turning in the air in the same direction, extending his arms and grabbing the red-haired boy, then pulling him and lifting him from the seat, ending with a landing on the other side of the vehicle, which crashed into a tree. Let me go, the boy said as he struggled in Issei's grip. Of course not, said Issei, leaving the boy unconscious. Let's see what we have, Draketrix said with interest. At that, Issei would open the boy's backpack, from where a ray of electricity came out which hit the ground and reformed, taking the form of a black being, of a small size, with characteristics of a battery. It was like seeing a living battery, black, yellow and silver. A megawatt, Issei said with confusion and surprise. Correction, a Nosdenian, said Draketrix from the Omnitrix dial. I know, but megawatt is another way of calling them, and I like that way more than calling them by the name of their species, Issei said disdainfully. To then see how the megawatt tried to open the trunk of the vehicle, which would cause Issei to approach him. Do you need help, friend? Issei asked, standing next to the alien that resembles a battery. The megawatt just nodded, then stepped aside so Issei could stand in front of the trunk of the vehicle, then open it to show another megawatt closed in a glass container, to which Issei in a quick movement would break the glass with his claws, thus freeing the megawatt. It seems we have someone who uses them as a battery, said Issei, watching how the two megawatts communicated between squeals and signs with their arms, then turned around to Issei, who activated the dial of the Omnitrix. Issei transformation. Once he became a megawatt, Issei would begin to talk to the other two, and then the 2 megawatts would jump onto an electric cable and begin to travel through its electricity, being followed by Issei, who would do the same action as them. Time after. You could see how the 3 megawatts arrived at a place in complete silence, where they would go to an apparently abandoned building, where they would enter through a window, in the form of electricity, and then reform their physical body. What the hell, Issei thought, seeing a machine in the center of the warehouse, where several megawatts were locked in glass containers, all of them were scared and trying to get out of their prison. The 2 megawatts that guided Issei went to the aid of their friends, trying to free them in vain, until a yellow electrical beam would start one, in a dome that was formed around the megawatt. Issei would look where the beam would come from, and see an orange-haired man with punky clothes. If I remember correctly, that was the type of clothes they used. With robotic arms and a metal backpack on his back, which was connected to the arms. And that other one would appear, the one who was red-haired, who would launch a ray of electricity from the palms of his arms, which were also robotic, but Issei in a quick flight would put himself between the free megawatt and the ray, thus being trapped. "Well, it seems we have a hero," said the red-haired man, attracting Issei towards him, who would growl. "Mate, it's time to use it," said Nuevo with emotion. "You say that because every time I absorb energy with that form it's like adrenaline, and that not only affects me, but you too?" Issei asked while trying to press the Omnitrix dial in his head until he succeeded and then was enveloped by a green light. "Ahaha, what can I say, it feels good when that happens," said Nuevo with a funny tone. Issei transformation. "It's time for feedback," Issei said in English with his electrified voice. He then absorbed the energy of the dome that enclosed him and shoot a small electrical charge from the fingers of his left hand at the red-haired man who had been momentarily paralyzed, which was taken advantage of by Issei, who would take it with one of his antennas and then throw it at his partner, who had been crashed by the red-haired man. After that, Issei would launch himself towards them, who upon recovering would begin to shoot bursts of electrical energy, which were absorbed by Issei, who had a confident smile, as he jumped and kicked the orange-haired man, then turned in the air and kicked the red-haired man, thus leaving the 2 out of combat. "That was easy," said Issei as he opened the orange-haired man's backpack, who was unconscious. "Finding a locked megawatt, I'll free you," friend Issei reported, hitting the container, thus freeing the megawatt, who was happy. "Don't forget the other," said Nuevo from Issei's mind calmly. "Of course not," said Issei addressing the red-haired man, but his antennas would detect electricity, to which he would turn around and see a purple-haired man who had an electric weapon connected to a metal backpack on his back. "Another one?" Issei asked, somewhat annoyed, addressing the purple-haired man, but he would receive a blow to the head, thus disorienting him a little. "I think I should have warned you about that," said Nuevo simply. "You think?" Issei asked with sarcasm and anger, seeing who hit him. "I see you're brave, brother, to come in here," said a man with a tattoo of a caravel on his face. "And you are?" Issei asked, confused, as he stood up. "I am Fistric, and I inform you that you are in a lot of trouble," he reported angrily and seriously. Chapter 10. Issei vs Fistric. Storyteller. "Fistric, and where is that name from?" Issei asked, somewhat confused and incredulous. "Are you mocking?" asked Fistric, although it was more of a statement. "More or less," Issei said with a mocking tone, before launching a blast of energy from the sockets of his fingers, directing the one on his left hand to the violet-haired boy, who received it fully, while the one on his right hand went towards Fistric, who dodged the attack. After that, Fistric would launch himself at Asia Issei, who launched himself at Asia Fistric, who would clash fists, and then launch his other arm, which would be counter-challenged with his opponent's fist. "Not bad, brother," said Fistric with a defiant smile. "Same here," said Issei, with the same smile as the orange-haired man. After the exchange of words, both people, a human and a conduit, would enter into a fight which was tied, but thanks to the agility of feedback they were beginning to gain more ground, but from one moment to the next, Fistric would take something from his right pocket, which caused him to receive a blow that threw him several meters away from Issei. But that would be used by the same orange-haired man who had released a cylindrical-shaped device. "Oh no," said Issei looking at the device, which was beeping with a red light. And at that moment he would let out a long beep before releasing a reddish-orange gas, which hurt Issei's only eye, in which he would bring his hands to his face while backing away. "Come on, man, that's being low," Issei said with annoyance, as he moved further away from Fistric, making sure that the orange-haired man himself didn't get close to him. "Sorry, brother, but I have business, and you being here alive is delaying it," said Fistric, starting to run towards Issei, who was enveloped by a green light after pressing the Omnitrix symbol on his chest. Issei transformation. Wrath, he began with a battle roar, before realizing something. "Damn Omnitrix, why are you giving me Crashupper and not Wrath?" Issei complained, before jumping up, reaching the ceiling, thus dodging a Fistric attack. "Just because you can transform into other forms won't help you beat me, brother," Fistric said, looking up. "And you think you can beat me with your fists?" Issei said, placing his feet on the ceiling, then jumping on it and heading towards Fistric at full speed. But the aforementioned would dodge it with difficulty, but would be sent flying by the shock wave that caused Issei to crash headfirst into the ground, to which Issei would get up and jump again, reaching Fistric who was still in the air and headbutting him in the stomach, causing the orange-haired man to crash into a wall of the place, almost knocking him out. "You sure can hold on," said Issei, seeing Fistric lying on the ground. "Of course, after all I'm strong," said Fistric, kicking Issei, then taking out what looked like a car keychain from his pocket while he ran towards the locked megawatts and pressed a button on the keychain. I didn't see that coming," Issei said, getting up, then turning around and seeing something that put him on alert. "Hey, come on old man, that's going too far," Issei said as he prepared for what was coming. "Don't complain, brother, you forced me to use it," said Fistric from inside the exosuit while pressing and lowering or raising some levers and buttons. "And you know that I can defeat you without using my 100%, but right now I want to end this quickly," said Issei before pressing the Omnitrix symbol. From the Omnitrix came out 4 types of tubes, 2 of which were from above went to his back and the other 2, which were the lower ones, adhered to his chest before his body was enveloped by a green light and his body turned blue with black lines and that it changed shape. Issei transformation. Echo Echo Supreme Issei roared as he released a sonic scream from his open mouth. "You won't beat me with that," said Fistric from his exosuit as he launched himself to hit Issei. He crosses his arms in X and takes the discs from his shoulders, then takes them off of them, and then throws him at Fistric. "Sonic wall," Issei shouted as the discs he sent positioned themselves and released sound waves that stopped Fistric's exosuit fist. Although he not only did that, but he also destroyed the left arm of the same person and was then thrown several meters later. "I warned you, surrender now and you won't get hurt," Issei said, looking at Fistric's exosuit seriously. "Of course not, brother," he said as he stood up and raised his right arm before several plates on his body rose up and revealed several missile launchers. "Where did you get that exosuit?" Issei thought while he relocated his thrown discs in front of him and then multiplied them from 2 to 8. After that, Fistric would press a button inside his exosuit which would cause the missile launchers to launch their respective missiles which went directly towards Issei, who would once again create a sonic wall, causing the missiles to explode and the sound waves to protect him. "That's all you have?" Issei asked with some mockery as he walked towards Fistric, who launched more missiles, which were repelled by the sonic waves of Issei's discs. Seeing this, Fistric would become more upset and start launching more of his missiles, some of which would crash into others, causing them to explode or go off course, this being the case of one that targeted the imprisoned megawatts, which when it crashed into the machine that imprisoned them, would explode and the megawatts would turn into electricity, thus breaking out of their prison. "Look what you made me do," Fistric complained, seeing the free megawatts, which looked angrily at how there were megawatts trapped in the back of Fistric's exosuit. "English, it will be better to end this now," said Issei as he made his 8 discs work again, only leaving 2 which went to surround Fistric, then multiply and completely surround the exosuit, which tried to hit the discs, but they only moved to one side, thus evading Fistric's attack well. "This ends now, Sonic Doom," Issei shouted as he released sonic waves from his mouth. All the discs held a powerful sonic attack which destroyed the exosuit in several parts, releasing the megawatts trapped in it and leaving Fistric inside of Issei. After that, Issei's disc surrounded Fistric and then released another sonic attack with less intensity, thus leaving him unconscious. "I think that's all," Issei said before pressing the dial of the Omnitrix and being enveloped by a green light. Issei XLR8. "I'll leave it to you guys, but before I go. It's rude to spy on people," Issei said before dodging an orange energy net, then leaving the place at high speed. He got away," said a brown-haired boy with green eyes. "I'm sorry, Judge Tennyson, but I didn't manage to catch him," said another person in a blue suit with yellow and orange eyes. "Rook, you don't need to call me Magistrate Tennyson, just call me Ben, and that's it," said the brown-haired boy. "Okay, Judge Ben, that's it," said the subject now known as Rook. Ben would only let out a sigh of disapproval. "Please call my grandfather and have him bring someone to help us with this," Ben said, pointing at the free megawatts, who were celebrating, some of whom were electrocuting an unconscious Fistric. "Right away, Judge Ben, and that's it," he said before taking out a disc with the Omnitrix symbol on it. Chapter 11. Entourage Proposal. Storyteller. "I asked him what I was doing today," Issei wondered while lying in his bed. A few minutes ago he had woken up. "And how about we look for that Asian girl?" Trix recommended with a little boredom. "Okay, I'll look for her after school, order the bubble robots to find out more about her," Issei said, getting up from his bed and starting to change. "Sure, and by the way, I think it's time to name the bubble robots," Trix reported with some encouragement. "And can you think of any?" Issei asked, leaving his room. "How about Robot Trix?" I offered Trix. "Not bad, but what about Omnibots?" Issei suggested as he walked down the stairs from the second floor to the first. "I like that one," said Trix with excitement. At that moment Canny would appear going up the stairs, Issei, and she would pass on the left side of the other without saying a word, but in itself Trix would feel something, being close to Canny's left hand. And someone would feel his same presence in Issei's left hand. It seems that Drake has already woken up, reported Trix. Friend, we already saw that when Raynor tried to kill me, Issei said calmly. It's true, I forgot, but leaving that aside, Drake has already noticed my existence, or at least has detected his presence in you, that is, my presence, Trix reported lazily. Well, thanks for the information, we'll have to be careful, Issei thought, a little on alert, as he sat on the couch in his house, with a somewhat burnt toast in his right hand and a coffee in his left. He would start eating his breakfast, something boring, eating the same thing almost every day, but at one point he would look sideways at how his parents and sister ate a better breakfast, apart from the fact that they looked happy, that would only cause Issei to sigh with tiredness. Palama mate, it's not worth feeling bad for them, said Trix, trying to raise the spirits of his partner best friend. Haha, no problem Omnitrix, I'm not sad, just tired of them continuing to be like this, Issei said with a small smile, after all, why should he be sad for them? His family had already done a lot to harm the brown-haired boy, to the point that he no longer considered them as such. He did not consider them as a family, for him they were just people that he unfortunately had to call parents or sister, so as not to have more problems. Well, I'm done, it'll be better to go to the academy, Issei said mentally, as he got up and headed to the entrance of his house. Time after. You could see a beautiful red-haired girl with blue eyes. This was Ria's Gremory, the queen of the Kuo Academy. Next to her was a black-haired girl with violet eyes, with an orange bow in her hair. This was Akeno Himejima, the queen of Ria's Gremory's entourage. At this moment both girls with a body that causes envy in other women were walking down a hallway of their institute while talking about Sierra Persona. So President, what do you plan to do with Canny-chan's brother? Akeno asked, looking at her king. Try to get him to join my entourage before Sona goes ahead. According to what I've sensed from him, he possesses a powerful sacred gear, Ria said analytically. Since you mention it, I've noticed how it gives off a strange aura, it's like seeing the same magic, but in a somewhat, said Akeno without finishing her sentence. Pure, she finished laughing at finishing her friend's sentence. Yes, pure, said Akeno somewhat thoughtfully. But this A and DTRAIG Trix. I see that your stalker in love wants you to join her entourage, Trix informed Issei, while he watched both girls through an invisible omnibot. Okay, thanks for the information, most likely he will send me Kiba or that white-haired girl, Issei thought calmly. Are you planning to join them? Trix asked curiously. No, the truth is I'm not interested in belonging to a house or whatever they call it, I'm more of a solo worker, and with that I mean me and you, apart from if they transform me into a demon, I would lose the way to use the Omnitrix and my Anodite part, to be a demon, Issei responded through his mind, as he entered his course. You're right about that, plus the fact that you would lose what I'm preparing for the balance breaker, said Trix with some emotion. And you will tell me what it is, and when I can use the armor? Issei asked with some hope. All in due time, my partner, all in due time. Apart from that, I want you to use it to kick the ass of a high-class demon, before the surprised and incredulous gaze of other demons, ha 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 ha, said Trix maliciously. I think I have to take away your tablet for a while, so you stop watching those demon hunting series, Issei said as he watched his teacher enter his classroom. You think? Asked Trix. Time after. And Issei could be seen having an apple for lunch, in the shade of a tree in the courtyard of his academy. He was calm and watching the clouds calmly, but at that moment a blonde-haired man known as Kibayuto would arrive, someone who surprised Issei for not being a pervert who enrolled in the school for the girls. How can I help you, Kiba-san? Issei said calmly, looking at the clouds. How Kiba began but would be interrupted by Issei. How did I know about your presence? Issei asked, turning to look at the blonde-haired man. Yes, that's it, Kiba said in surprise. Let's say I have my tricks, Issei began as he got up from the ground, then cleaned the dirt on his clothes. Let's go with your president, Riaz, Issei said, starting to walk. Wait, how Kiba began but would be interrupted by Issei again. How did I know that you had come to take me to her? Well, in the same way that I know that you are demons and among other things, although how I know it is a secret, said Issei as he headed to a certain building, being followed by a surprised, confused and distrustful Kiba. Time after. And well, could I know why I was called? Issei asked, looking at Riaz, who was sitting in an elegant armchair, and the two of them were almost completely surrounded by the red-haired woman's entourage. Well, I called you to offer you to join my club and something else, said Riaz with a confident smile. You mean your entourage? Issei asked normally, looking at Riaz calmly, who was surprised. How did you know? She started laughing in surprise, but Issei would get ahead of her. First things first, I know what the supernatural world is, its inhabitants and other things. I know quite a bit since I possess a sacred gear with its own consciousness, but leaving that aside, I know that you have called me to join your demon retinues, and the answer is no, I do not want to join, do not be offended, but I prefer to remain human, said Issei calmly. But he lets out a sigh and clears his throat. Okay, but you know, you could be so powerful that you could become a demon, and you would also gain many more things, like wealth, fame, and probably women, Risa said confidently, although a somewhat arrogant tone could be noticed. He lets out a sigh. No, he said, surprised to everyone. I'm not going to join. The reason? Because I lose much more being a demon, angel or a fallen one, that includes the other races. I'm not going to join any side, but he approaches Rias, putting almost everyone on alert. We can be allies. If you have problems you could call me, and says vice versa, said Issei standing in front of Rias and extending his left arm. I'll think about it, you can go, said Rias somewhat frustrated. Okay, call me if you want to tell me your decision, Issei said before leaving the room. After leaving Arias and her entourage alone, she would walk down a hallway calmly, heading for the exit, but she would run into her sister. Hey? What are you doing here, pervert? Canny said with some annoyance, crossing her arms. First you made up those rumors that I'm a pervert, Issei began, somewhat annoyed, approaching Asia. Canny, second, your president called me to join her entourage, and third, I rejected the proposal, so you're not complaining all the time, Issei said, and then passed by the boy's side, who was more annoyed. That's good, now I won't have to put up with a pathetic, weak, useless guy, said the girl, as she began to walk towards the room where her king was going. At least I have my complete sacred gear, Issei said calmly, leaving Canny surprised. Chapter 12. Omniverse 2 Fallen Angel 0. Storyteller. Well, that turned out better than expected, said an Issei through his mind, leaving his academy. Yes, although I realized something, said Draketrix calmly. And that would be it, Issei asked curiously. That a certain white-haired Nekomata is following us, reported Draketrix, sensing and seeing Kaneko's presence through an omnibot. Rias had to tell her to follow me to know more about me. She asked me why she wants me to join her. Issei said and thought in a thoughtful tone, as he continued walking calmly, already seeing Kaneko located. Probably their parents and other people's parents compromised them with each other, Draketrix suggested with some curiosity. Engaged to someone else? Issei asked confused. If demons have an obsession with keeping blood pure, they will probably be the new Atasians, when they realize that even if two pure blood demons have a child, that blood is contaminated with another, regardless of whether both bloods are pure, since each one belongs to different types of demon, answered Draketrix with some laziness. If you say it that way, you're right, said Issei, so that after the Omnitrix appeared in his left hand, and then activated the Omnitrix when he entered an alley, so that after a green light came out of the same alley. At that point, a loli with white hair and yellow eyes would approach him while licking a lollipop. Once she arrived, she would look inside and see that there was no one there, which frustrated her a little. Damn, I lost it, I better go back to the president and tell her what happened, Kaneko thought with frustration before leaving. But what she didn't know was that she was being held by a small metallic being with 3 eyes, with white, black and green parts, along with 4 green wings on its back. Issei transformation. Thank goodness Nanomic exists, Issei said happily before pressing the dial of the Omnitrix and returning to his human form. I think Rias also wants you for your power, since he managed to feel your mana, confusing it with your aura and my presence, Draketrix informed. Yes, it seems so, Issei said before leaving. Time after. The brown-haired girl could be seen, this was none other than Canny, she was carrying a bicycle next to her and seemed frustrated. The RRR damn perverted contractor, Canny complained frustrated. And that he would see in the distance a person that he was surprised to see. And what are you doing here? Canny asked, somewhat annoyed, looking at her brother. First, my name is Canny, second, I'm here walking, and third, what do you care, Issei responded calmly. HMNP whatever, said Canny looking away. Did a contract go badly for you? Issei asked curiously. Yes, wait, how do you know that? Canny asked surprised. I know about the contracts thanks to my sacred gear, Issei said as he raised his left hand showing a shining digital watch. A dumb digital watch? I asked while raising a hand and looking with some disinterest at the Omnitrix. I inform you that I have consciousness, said Draketrix from the Omnitrix, surprising Canny. But what? She asked surprised. Hello, I am a sacred gear with my own consciousness, greeting Draketrix. Yes, I see, Rias had told me that there are sacred gears with their own consciousness, said Canny thoughtfully, and by the way, you're just here to show off? Asked Canny annoyed. Not really, I was just passing through here, but anyway I was going back home, and since I'm here I'll go with you, Issei said, and then started walking. Haha, and they see me with someone like you, said Canny with grace and sarcasm. It's true, after all I'm not Canny Haidu, I'm better, Issei said gracefully and with rhyme. "Drrrr damn bastard, come back here," said Canny, quickening her pace, arriving with Issei. But from one moment to the next, Issei pushed Canny, thus preventing a spear of light from piercing her. "But what?" Canny asked incredulously. "Damn, fallen angels," Issei said, looking up. "HMNP foul, now it's your turn, Calawerner," said the ruby-haired woman, while creating another spear of light. "Okay, middled," said the blue-haired girl, throwing her own spear of light. "What do women in this world have to wear that kind of tight, revealing clothing, along with other types like the ones worn by the majority?" asked Dragtrix, somewhat confused, although he had been ignored. But from one moment to the next, Issei would release mana, which was used to create a barrier that blocked the spear of light. "But what?" asked Calawerner, surprised. "Hey diva, tell me, how do you know how to use your sacred gear?" Issei asked seriously. "What did you call me?" Canny asked angrily. "This is no time for your stupidity," Issei began yelling at his sister, who fell silent. "Summon your sacred gear now, because this is going to get difficult," Issei said before lowering the barrier that made his hands be enveloped by mana. Canny summoned her sacred gear, which although still incomplete was now stronger. "Ha, not even his sacred gear is complete," Middle said gracefully. He turns to look at Canny. "Is this a joke?" Issei asked, looking at the gauntlet in his hand. "Shut up," Canny shouted angrily. "Whatever, at least you know how to use magic?" Issei asked hopefully. "Of course," Canny said as she created a crimson-colored magic circle. "Well then, let the battle without quarter begin," said Issei before starting to run towards the fallen angels. "Pathetic," said Calawerner, throwing himself at Issei with a spear of light in his hands. Creating a monosphere in her hand, she would throw it towards Calawerner, who would dodge it, but the monosphere had not been thrown towards her. "Ah, you failed," she mocked confidently. "You think?" Issei asked with a smile, dodging her so that Canny would launch a fire magic attack at him. The same attack hit him squarely, burning much of his clothes, while the monosphere headed towards Middle, who would throw a spear of light at the sphere, which exploded, but from the smoke another monosphere would come out, which hit the blonde-haired girl, who was thrown against a tree. "That's all?" Issei asked, wrapping his left hand in mana. "Damn, let's go," Middle said Calawerner before taking flight and leaving, followed by the blonde-haired girl. "What just happened?" Canny asked, confused. "Not much happened, they just got confident, and when they saw that we hurt them they decided to leave, that simple," said Issei before starting to walk towards his home. "Hey? We're not going to do anything?" Canny asked incredulously at her brother's attitude. "Yes, or well, I'll plow it after I finish something." "Well, you tell your owner what happened," said Issei calmly. "Hey, Arias is not my owner," Canny complained as she started walking. "So what are you?" Issei asked. Well, Canny began to say. The next day at night, Issei could be seen turned into XLR8 going at full speed through the streets of his city, looking for any sign of fallen angels. "Damn, how long have I been here running back and forth?" Issei complained in frustration. "We should follow their scents," Dragtrix suggested. "I would if you and I could feel it, it's like I saw them disappear," Issei said seriously. "You're right, you'll have to think like a fallen angel to know where they can hide," said Dragtrix thoughtfully. Fallen angel, angel, that's at the churches," Issei said before increasing speed. "The churches?" Dragtrix asked, confused. "Yes, the churches, where once when they were angels of heaven they had to venerate and care in honor of their father. Those two fallen angels have to be in some abandoned church," Issei said enthusiastically. "Hey, you're right, I'll give you the locations of these right away," said Dragtrix excitedly. "Okay," Issei said. "Time after." Cannonbolt Supreme. Issei, Cannibal.Supreme. Issei roared before breaking through the wall of an abandoned church in his spike sphere form, going straight towards a surprised Middle, taking her to crash into a wall, then bouncing off and going straight towards a Calawerner on the floor with injuries, crashing into her and taking her into a wall. Thus bouncing again and going at full speed towards a Rainer who was about to stab Canny in the back, thus crashing into the fallen angel and pushing her into a fallen angel in a trench coat, thus taking him along the way to crash into a wall, thus leaving the four fallen angels inside the church unconscious, then returning to his bipedal form, falling behind Canny. She turns and sees Issei turned, putting her on alert. "Who are you?" Canny asked in a combat pose until she recognized the dial of the Omnitrix. "Calm down," he presses the dial of the Omnitrix, returning to his human form. "It's me," said Issei with a smile and with another style of clothing. "The right one." "What are you?" Canny began, but Issei got ahead of her. "Omniverse?" Issei asked in a mocking tone. "Thanks for the help," Issei Arias thanked, entering through the hole made by Cannonbolt followed by a Keno. "You're welcome." He realizes something. "Oh no," said Issei, starting to run towards a blonde girl lying on the ground. "Canny, could you tell us what happened in here?" Riaz asked, addressing the blonde-haired girl. "Why yes, President," said Canny following Riaz. "Damn, they think they can help her," said Issei looking at Riaz. I'm sorry but he's already dead, but I have a way to help, Ria said with a smile. And that would be it? Issei asked, looking at her. Step aside and you'll see, said Riaz, standing next to the blonde. Okay, Issei said somewhat distrustfully. I'm after. So you'll reincarnate her as a demon from your entourage? Issei asked, looking at Riaz. Yes, in fact I've already done it, said Riaz with a confident smile. I think that Issei began but would be interrupted by a beep. Hell not now, Issei thought while watching the least of the Omnitrix, which was playing a video where it showed how a bank was robbed. What is that? Kiba asked curiously. The work call. He lets out a sigh. Well, Asia, that's enough, I'll leave everything to you, see you, said Issei before running out of the place. That was weird, Kaneko added, confused. What are we going to do with Asia? Kani asked. Well, since you were the one who met her first and all, aside from involving Kiba and Kaneko in this, she will be staying at your house, Riaz informed her 8-pawn carrier. Well. Okay, wait, what? Kani asked, realizing what her president said. Chapter 13. A new partner. Storyteller. Okay, that was easy, said Issei looking down at the top of a building. I think the same, said Trix looking at the bank that was being robbed, but right now the police were leaving with the arrested criminals. Do you think it was a good idea to leave Asia with Riaz? Issei asked, unsure. I'll tell you the truth, and that is that I agree 50% and disagree 50%. Riaz revived her with the motive of having someone to heal her other pieces, also counting her, but also to take care of her and protect her, since she would be a very important piece for her, explained Trix, not very decided. At that, Issei lets out a sigh. Okay, you're right, I just hope he doesn't use her just as a walking first aid kit, said Issei before activating the Omnitrix and selecting Jetray, then pressing the Omnitrix dial and being enveloped by a green light. Issei, Jetray. Jetray, Issei roared before taking flight. The next day. Some loud beeps could be heard from the Omnitrix, causing Issei to wake up, then deactivate the Omnitrix's alarm clock function, then get out of bed and change his pajamas, which consisted of a white t-shirt with some expensive black pants with 2 white lines on each side, changing it into his academy outfit. He would leave his room, meeting someone he did not expect. Are you here to find Kani? Issei asked curiously. Hi Issei-san, in answering your question, I'm not here to pick up Kani, in fact this is where I live now, Asia informed shyly. Okay, Issei said simply before starting to walk towards the first floor of his house, until he realized what Asia said. Wait, did you say you live here? Issei asked incredulously. I'm after. Great, just what I needed, said Issei accompanied by Kani and Asia. Don't complain, stupid, said Kani angrily. You guys were practically supposed to leave the house later, Issei said. Yes, but we have to go early to the student council to talk to Sona, Kani reported frustrated. Well, I wish you good luck. Well, I go to my body, said Issei before entering the Kuo Academy. I'm after. Come on buddy, there's only about 5 minutes left, said Trix enthusiastically. I think this wouldn't be so boring if I didn't know what topic we were talking about, Issei complained boredly, until out of the corner of his eye, he managed to see a megawatt on the other side of his classroom window. Omnidrag, was that megawatt? Issei asked surprised. Yes, that was a megawatt you saw. It would be better to go and prevent it from playing any of its pranks, said Trix seriously. I would go, but the teacher wouldn't let me leave, the Issei began, but would be interrupted by the recess bell. How timely, added Omnidrag. Don't even tell me, Issei informed, leaving his classroom quickly. After that, Issei would go to his school's bathrooms, where he would get into one and then activate the Omnitrix in its digital watch form and select the alien he wanted, then press the Omnitrix dial, being enveloped by a green light. Issei cold. Cold, Issei said before becoming intangible and passing through the bathroom wall. But the megawatt. The same child-sized living battery was wandering around the Kuo Academy. He could be seen bored. He practically found nothing to entertain himself with until he heard some voices in a room. Approaching it, he would see several women hugging each other. And how do you plan to resolve your commitment with Razor-kun? President asked Akeno looking at Riaz. I don't know, Akeno, Riaz said heavily. And why don't we ask Issei-kun to join, but now in a different way, Akeno suggested with a smile. And how could we do it, Akeno? Riaz asked, looking at her queen. Well, we know his secret identity, the Omniverse hero, so what if we blackmail him, Akeno said. No offense, Akeno-senpai, but that sounds like a bad idea, Kaneko informed while eating a popsicle. And why does that sound like a bad idea? Akeno asked confused. When they gave me the order to follow Issei-senpai, not only did I lose him, but also after thinking about it a bit I realized that he had noticed my presence, but I came to notice that they were watching me. He probably has something to watch people, Kaneko reported seriously. That means that if we think of doing something against him, he will know about it, Riaz said seriously. Exactly, that also means that we could be being watched right now, Kaneko reported in a serious tone. That comment from Kaneko put the other two on alert. They stood up and looked around searching for something out of the ordinary. While the megawatt was thinking about something until he screamed something that had been told to him. Omniverse wasn't the name of that guy who saved my cousins from that Fistric guy. He asked himself with confusion until he felt something cold send him. I finally have you, little one, said a cold man looking at the frozen megawatt, then taking him in his arms and leaving the place through the walls of the academy. Time after. Would you tell me why you were at the academy, Kuo? Issei asked, looking at the megawatt with his body frozen with the exception of his head. The megawatt only said squeaks that Issei didn't understand. Okay, wait a moment while I use a translator, said Issei, bringing the Omnitrix closer to the megawatt, which upon seeing this would turn into electricity and enter the Omnitrix. Oh no, said Draketrix, feeling the intruder enter the Omnitrix. Omnidrake, can you do something? Issei asked. If I may, wait a second, Draketrix reported before disconnecting from the outside. Inside the Omnitrix. The symbol of intergalactic peace was on a grayish metallic floor, with several green lines of circuits that went in various directions, joining with cylindrical containers that had colors or characteristics similar to the aliens of Issei. Although they were not the only containers in the place, hundreds of billions of DNA samples surrounded the symbol of intergalactic peace. From which some yellow electrical sparks from Adrian Presente, where the megawatt that had been introduced to the Omnitrix, would come from. Wow, what is this place? The megawatt wondered between squeals, looking everywhere. This place is the Omnitrix, said a Draketrix appearing behind the megawatt, who turned around in fear. What are you? The megawatt asked in fear. Calm down, little one, I won't hurt you, I just want to know what you're doing here. Asked Draketrix, looking at the megawatt. Well, the megawatt began to scream. Time after. Hey buddy, we have a new friend, Draketrix reported excitedly. Hey? That's the one you mean, Omnidrake? Issei asked, confused. You'll see, you can go out now, said Draketrix excitedly. From the Omnitrix, a green electricity would come out that would take the form of a megawatt. Hello, he waves with his hand and in a shrill voice. Can someone explain to me what happened? Issei asked, confused. Chapter 14. Razor Phoenix. Storyteller. Yue yawns epically. A new day and a new problem, said Issei, getting up from his bed and then starting to change. What encouragement, said Draketrix mockingly. At that moment, an electric current would come out of the Omnitrix that took the form of the megawatt that had stayed with our protagonist. Good morning, megawatt greeted with his shrill voice and extended a handshake. Good morning, battery, greeting Issei to megawatt. Good morning, battery, greeting Draketrix. What are we going to do today? Battery asked, turning into electricity and entering the Omnitrix while Issei left his room. Good morning to both of you, said Issei, passing by Canny and Asia. Good morning, Issei-san, Asia greeted with a smile, being the only one who greeted him. Today we will make something I want for armor, answered Draketrix. An armor, asked Battery. If so, it is an ability of mine. I can grant my wearer armor that will make him more powerful, as well as giving him more resistance, answered Draketrix with emotion. Wow, he exclaimed. Time after. Canny, you can go find your brother, said Riaz to her 8-pawn carrier. And why me? Canny asked. I need you to come, since I want to ask you again to join my entourage, and we don't have much time since unfortunately someone is coming, Riaz responded seriously. Okay, I'll go get it, said Canny, leaving the room. But the Issei. He was drinking an orange juice. He was behind one of the farthest buildings from the center of the academy. Next to him was a 30-centimeter dragon, green and wrapped in green metallic armor, with several green gems, one of which was larger than the others and was on his chest, with the symbol of intergalactic peace. This was Draketrix, who had managed to get out of the Omnitrix. On the other side was Battery with some batteries in vain, absorbing its energy. Ready, Issei said, starting to deal cards. Okay, and by the way, tell me how to play one, said Battery, taking a certain number of cards. It's easy, I'll explain it to you, said Draketrix, also taking a certain number of cards, being the same amount of Battery. What are you doing? Canny asked, looking at them. That on one, Issei replied simply. One? Canny asked, confused. It's a card game. He turns to look at her. What are you doing here? Issei asked, looking at her. I'm here to take you to Riaz-sama, so leave your nonsense and follow me, Canny said, and then turned around and started to leave the place. Well, I have nothing better to do, Issei said, getting up from the floor and starting to follow her. Time after. Here's who you were crying for, Issei said, entering the occult club. What a stupid way to enter, Issei-senpai, said Kaneko, staring at him. I missed you too, kindergarten girl, said Issei. I'm the same age as you, Kaneko replied angrily. And then why do you call me senpai? Issei asked, confused, but before Kaneko answered, a magic seal would appear where a blonde-haired man would appear, along with several women. Hi Riaz, it's been a while since I've been in the human world, said the blonde-haired man with an arrogant smile. This guy, he has to be Ria's fiancé. This blonde thing is the reason Ria's is desperate for you, said Trix with a thoughtful tone. You know, that sounded weird, Issei reported. It sounded like the red-haired girl was in love with Issei, Battery added. And she is, after all she is his stalker, said Trix offended. Whatever, what the hell, said Issei coming out of his own world, seeing Razor gathering several strands of Ria's crimson hair with his right hand, while with the other he caressed his leg. Hey friend, Issei began to say, drawing the attention of Razor and all the women in the room. That's not something very inappropriate on your part, especially in front of several people, Issei said, surprising everyone with how he spoke to the heir of the Phoenix family, which made the blonde-haired man angry. And you are? Razor asked, getting up from the chair where he was sitting and then starting to walk towards the chestnut tree. Who am I? Issei asked, his hair casting a shadow over his eyes, giving him a somewhat threatening appearance from the point of view of the women in the room. Yes, who are you? Razor responded with a question. I am, create suspense. I am. He fell silent for a moment. I am Felipe, Issei said with grace in his voice, raising his gaze, revealing a big mocking smile. Are you kidding me? Razor asked angrily. The truth is yes, Issei answered before dodging a fireball. Damn low-class demon, for your lack of respect towards me I will kill you, said Razor angrily, starting to walk towards Issei. Well, his hands were enveloped in fire, but this would only be enveloped by a green light. Issei transformation. After becoming, thanks to Trix who manipulated the Omnitrix, choosing and transforming his friend into an Orishan, Issei would launch a jet of cold water under pressure, aiming at the ground, splashing a little at Razor and thus causing him to move away from him, now an Orishan. What he said in a low voice, then spoke again in a louder voice. How do I know? Just because you can do that doesn't make you stronger than me, said Razor before throwing a fireball at him, but Issei would throw a water bubble at him that blocked the fire attack. I see that your arrogance does not allow you to see that the one who has the advantage here is me, said Issei, taking a step forward but would step back, evading an attack from one of the razor pieces. Enough already, said a female voice that came from a magic circle that had appeared at the place, from where a beautiful white-haired servant emerged, wearing the typical clothes that a blue and white servant wears. Graphia, said Ria, surprised, as did most of the people in the room, with the exception of Issei, Trix and Battery, who didn't know who exactly it was. May I know what's going on here? Graphia asked seriously. This thing here has disrespected me. I am the heir of the Phoenix family. I deserve better treatment than this, said Razor angrily, looking at Issei with fury. And this bird thinks he's better than me, said Issei, pointing at Razor. Holy God, they look like children, Trix complained. Don't even tell me, added Battery. What did you call me? Come on, repeat it, said Razor angrily. I called you a bird, or did you not hear? Pajarako, said Issei with mockery and annoyance. You know, my friend, it's very obvious that you don't like arrogant people, said Trix. Damn low-class demon, I'm going to kill you, Razor began to say, but would be interrupted by Issei. Wait, there he is, enveloped by a green light, which when it faded showed Issei in his human form. I am 100% human, said Issei, although he doubted the 100% on his part. Adonite. Human? Graphia asked, confused. Does that mean you're a human with sacred gear activated? The white-haired girl asked again, curious. That's right, Issei replied. So if he's a human, he has no business being here, Razor said angrily. That's right, I have nothing to do here, so when I finish this, Riaz, call me for what you went to send Canny to look for me for, Issei informed, starting to leave the room. Canny? And who is that? If only I could be sure she's just a pathetic slave, Razor said arrogantly, angering the Gremory group. At that moment Riaz was going to reproach her stupid fiancé who was hated by the red-haired girl, but Issei got ahead of her. Unfortunately she is my sister, and unfortunately she is better than you, said Issei, trying to open the door, leaving the Gremory clan surprised, although Canny was more surprised to be defended by Issei. Companion, it is better that you do not say anything. It seems that you can still fix your familiarity bond with your brother, said the Red Emperor in Canny's mind. PSK, whatever, I don't care anyway, I'd rather not be his sister, Canny said annoyed. So do you want to be her friend or girlfriend? Drake asked with false innocence, startling Canny. The call was going to answer him, annoyed, but they would be interrupted by an explosion. The whole place was silent after Issei's response to Razor and Canny arguing with the red celestial dragon. The blonde-haired man caused an explosion with his fire, sending Issei crashing into the door of the room, going through it and crashing into the wall that was on the other side of the door, all that while a black haze rose covering the entrance of the room. Apart from not allowing the green light that formed inside the smoke to be seen by the supernatural beings in the room, when Graphia was about to give up and go help the brown-haired man, at that moment the smoke went forward, being carried by something, also giving the barely noticeable silhouette of that something. which extended what looked like his left arm from which the smoke on his fingers and palm was fading, and when he did so he prostrated a hand made of green plants, black and with 4 fingers of 2 colors, half attached to the orange knuckles and the other yellow, right in the palm. A kind of greenish gas would come out releasing a great horrible smell, but that would not last long. Since the smell of fire came with a spark that formed in the place of the gas, causing an explosion stronger than that of Razor, which was thrown against a wall which was crossed, so Razor would be thrown to the outskirts of the building where both entourages were. The smoke begins to fade away, showing the swamp fire. You thought that would kill me, said Issei, approaching the hole that was created by Razor, then jumping through it, landing on the grass on the ground, then beginning to approach a Razor that was regenerating with fire. Issei, swamp fire. We have to stop them, said Riaz, looking at Grafia again. And that I will, but first I want to see something, said Grafia, approaching the hole, seeing the fight that was about to begin. But the Methanosian and the Phoenix. Am human, said Razor, getting up from the ground already regenerated. Am chicken, Issei said, releasing methane from his palms and then lighting it up, projecting fire and giving it a more intimidating appearance. Omnitrix, play some music from my playlist, Issei thought as he began to jog. Right away, said the voice of 9 in Issei's head, beginning to play bad, that only sounded in the brown-haired man's head. I think you didn't have to say anything, Trix reported, but was ignored by Issei. I will teach you your place in this life, said Razor, launching himself against Issei, who launched himself against the blonde-haired man. Issei didn't say anything, he just hit Razor on the right cheek, and Razor hit him on the left cheek, but Issei, acting quickly, would release methane in his left hand and then release a spark, thus causing an explosion in Razor's face, who was stunned apart from being seriously damaged, but was regenerating, which was also done by Issei, since his left hand was literally destroyed. After that, and once both opponents regenerated, both would launch themselves against each other, colliding fists wrapped in fire. Then Issei would launch a kick to the stomach of the blonde-haired man, which was thrown backwards, but he would be held thanks to his flames, which were used to propel himself towards Issei, who pointed his hands at Razor and then released methane that was simultaneously ignited by a spark, causing an explosion greater than those made long ago, thus repelling Razor and destroying much of his body. But Issei would not stop there, propelling himself with flames created through the methane would go through the smoke caused by the explosion, reaching the regenerating chapo of the blonde-haired man, who would receive a blow from Issei that sent him to the ground and then resurface a stomp on his stomach propelled by flames, created thanks to the methane from Issei, which would be launched into the air by an explosion of fire that destroyed his legs, which regenerated in a second. Doing an acrobatic stunt in the air and managing to stabilize himself and land on his feet on the floor that was beginning to burn. But he would be invested by Razor, who had wings of fire on his back, thus taking Issei to crash against a wall, causing him very serious damage, but all his wounds regenerated without any problem, and then in a quick movement that he made, placing his right hand on the chest of the blonde-haired man while he was trying to choke him. It would again cause an explosion that injured the ruby-haired man, but he would not let go. Razor shouted, placing his left hand on Issei's shoulder and then pulling his head, thus decapitating the alien. But he would still be alive, now releasing a greater amount of methane throughout his body, while his head regenerated. How about this, Issei said with a smile before lighting the methane with a spark. Boom. What's wrong with that crazy man? He committed suicide, Canny shouted, seeing the huge explosion caused by her brother. Bray feel like that something, said Riaz, to which the white-haired woman would launch an ice spell against the regenerating body of Razor that had been thrown to crash against a wall. Then he would be preparing a spell to get rid of the smoke that covered Issei, but from the smoke would come the voice of Fire Pants. Wow, the first time that hurt me, Issei said, coming out of the smoke, showing his destroyed silver body while it slowly regenerated. Hey, keep Lee living, said Kaneko, surprised. Hey, he draws everyone's attention in the big bird. Issei asked, confused because he couldn't see it. This fight is already over, so I will not accept that they continue fighting. If they do, I will be forced to stop them again, said Graphius seriously. Okay, I have no problem, said Issei, pressing the dial of the Omnitrix on his chest, thus turning back into a human. Chapter 15, Haidu vs Tennyson. Storyteller. Could you repeat to me that it's a rating game again, Issei asked, seeing Riaz, Grafia and Razor, along with their entourage, already gone. Oh god, I feel a pain in my head, to which she brings her hand to it. I've explained it to you 7 times, she said, annoyed. Okay, if I understand, I will help you in your training because I broke your wall and part of the roof, burned the patio, and wait a second, I didn't break the door, said Issei, looking at a sheet of paper where the damage done by the little fight he had with Razor was. We know that, but someone has to take the blame, and unfortunately that person is you, since Razor is a high-level demon, and there is not much that can be done to make him receive his punishment, said Riaz, frustrated. If I already know, he stands up and stretches. It would be better for me to leave. I have some matters to attend to, said Issei, beginning to leave, being seen off by the few people left in the place. I'm after. I wonder if there are low-class people in this world, said Issei in his vigilante suit on top of a building. It exists, but I don't know where the entrance is, said Battery, appearing on Issei's shoulder. Really? Issei asked, surprised. Yes, that's right, Battery replied. Okay, and by the way, what about Omnitrix? Issei asked about his friend. He's sleeping, Battery said before entering the Omnitrix and Issei jumping to the side, avoiding an orange energy capture net. He would then avoid the bandages of a mummy that had the Omnitrix on his waist. Hello Omniverse, greeted Thepkufan, then lengthened the bandages he had for fingers, wrapping Issei in that way. First Issei thought, activating the Omnitrix with difficulty and pressing the core without seeing what form it would transform into. Issei, fire. How convenient, said Issei, burning the bandages that trapped him and then propelling himself towards the sky. Looks like Ben got away from us, Rook said, arriving on the scene with his proto-weapon in his hands. Not yet, Ben said, pressing the dial of the Omnitrix and being enveloped in a green light. Then Astrodactyl. Astrodactyl, balk, Ben roared, taking flight and beginning to chase Issei. Once the chase began, Ben would release his green plasma whips, barely catching Issei, who would be enveloped in a green light, from which a plasma shot would emerge that hit Ben squarely, thus raising a smokescreen. Issei transformation. Astrodactyl, balk, Issei roared, turning on his jetpack and spreading his wings, moving away from the smokescreen and preparing for what would come out of there. Cold was the roar that came from the smoke before a necrophrygian flew out of it, heading towards Issei at full speed. Oh no, balk, said Issei, starting to move away from the necrophrygian, who would launch his icy breath, freezing his legs, giving him more weight and disorienting him. Damn, his species is unknown XD. I got you, Ben said, getting closer to Issei and starting to freeze Issei. Electrical sparks caused by Battery would come out of Issei's Omnitrix dial, causing Issei to be enveloped in a green light. Supreme cold. Issei, cold supreme. Issei roared, becoming intangible and crossing the ice. He would launch a flame of orange fire with yellow and a small part of red towards Ben, who would become intangible, thus avoiding the attack. Once the fire faded, he showed a large thick blue ice, which would fall down, leaving Ben in his respective place. Damn, Issei said, frustrated, watching the ice hit the ground and shatter. Luckily the two were fighting in a donut where there were no civilians. That wasn't a very clever thing to do, was it? He said, and Ben asked mockingly. Shut up, Issei said, starting to walk away from the normal necrophrygian, leaving him behind. Oh no, my friend, said Ben seriously, beginning to follow him. Restarting the chase, Issei would become frustrated and press the dial of the Ultimatrix, being enveloped by a green light. Issei, Jetray. Jetray, Issei roared, increasing his flight speed, leaving Ben behind. Wow, it's been a long time since I saw Jetray, Ben said, surprised, pressing the dial of the Omnitrix. Then Jetray. Jetray, Ben roared, going faster and thus managing to catch up with Issei, who began to shoot lasers at him from the tip of his tail. But Ben would not be left behind and would begin to shoot his own laser beams from his eyes, trying to hit Issei, who dodged them masterfully, but tired of that after several minutes, he would press the dial of the Omnitrix, thus being enveloped by a green light that came to cut off Ben, which covered his eyes. Damn, I didn't see that coming, Ben said, frustrated as he covered his eyes with his hands, but as he did so he heard a metallic bang, like metal colliding against metal, and then heard a shouted name that he recognized. Armadillo, Issei roared, hitting Ben, who was sent flying down. After that, Issei would fall on the roof of a building, breaking the edge of it, although once there he did not have to wait long when a Ben turned into Jetray arrived flying and then pressed the dial of his Omnitrix, thus being enveloped by a green light. Clockwork, Ben roared, freezing time and punching Issei. Once the blow was dealt to Issei, he did not move. After that Ben would give him several more blows. Well, from Issei's point of view, he would barely be able to feel how several blows were deposited in his stomach and then be thrown backwards in an upward direction, being thrown out of the building, but he would barely press the Omnitrix, being enveloped by a green light. Issei goop. Goop, Issei shouted as he began to levitate thanks to his anti-gravity projector. To then return to the building where he was thrown from and where Ben was waiting for him. You came back? Ben asked, and that I was about to go to you, said Ben, pressing the dial of the Omnitrix and being enveloped by a green light which, when fading, showed a metallic being of yellow and dark brown color with a head of a grayish metal that was levitating between the shoulders of each arm. Apart from that, it had minds instead of hands. Then transformation. Lodestar, Ben roared, before extending his left arm, from which magnetic waves emerged which attracted Issei's anti-gravity projector, causing the green, acidic liquid that made up his body to fall to the ground in a puddle composed of himself. Hey, that's cheating, Issei shouted, annoyed. You're right, but I know very well what Goop is capable of. Cheap copy, said Ben, starting to walk towards Issei. I'm not a cheap copy, but whatever, battery does me the honors, said Issei before electric rays came out from the Omnitrix dial on the anti-gravity projector, which were conducted through Ben's body, which would cause the anti-gravity projector to fly through the skies. But what happened? Ben said, confused, watching how his body unconsciously began to attract several metallic objects, while at the same time repelling them. This was also happening with his own body, whose head moved in all directions, colliding with his shoulders. The energy that was distributed throughout your body consisted of negative and positive energy, and that's what magnets are made of, Issei said in a mocking tone. You're upsetting my magnetism, Ben said, frustrated, watching as gravitational waves reached Goop's body and pulled him off the floor and up into the night sky. At that, Ben would barely press the dial of the Omnitrix, turning into his human form, but upon doing so a metallic object would hit him in the face, causing him to fall on his back holding his face and cursing under his breath. But out of the corner of his eye he would see a flash of green light, at which point, still dreaming, his face would rise and activate his Omnitrix, beginning to select the alien that would become next, added to the fact that he would see how Issei in his normal form would fall before him, activating his own Omnitrix, once both aliens were selected in their respective Omnitrix. Both wearers would raise their gazes seeing each other. The question, Issei said with his suit on. Which one? Ben answered with a question and a calm tone. Is there a reason why you want to catch me? Issei asked curiously. Yes, but I'll just tell you a few. You have an Omnitrix, and we don't know if it's a copy or not. The creator wants to see you, and the last reason I'll tell you is that we know that you will never give up without a fight, said Ben, placing his hand on the dial of the Omnitrix. Good point, you're right, I'm not going to give up without a fight first, said Issei, placing his hand on top of the Omnitrix dial. Okay, and by the way, who's counting? Ben asked. Both Issei responded simply. Okay, so in 3 Ben began to count. 2 Issei continued counting. 1 Ben continued counting. Now both brown-haired boys shouted at the same time. Ben transformation. The one on the left. Issei transformation. Choose the model you want. If you're wondering, the first one has the colors of the Wrath from the reboot, and the second one has the colors of the Wrath from Alien Force Ultimate Alien. Wrath, both Omnitrix wearers shouted, then launched themselves at each other, fist bumping. Let me tell you something, Wrath pirate version, Wrath will crush you, he will crush you and defeat you, and he will take you before Asmuth, Ben roared furiously, punching Issei in the abdomen. Pirate version annoyed shout, let me tell you something, Wrath Tennyson, Wrath will defeat you and show his superiority as the Americans did against the entrails to create the soft drinks known as sodas or sodas, Issei said with annoyance, giving Ben several punches, which would be thrown back. He lands on the ground. Don't get the Americans involved and enter this battle where Wrath will win, Ben said as he started running on all fours. When he reached Issei he would jump and take Issei to the ground, but Issei, propelling himself along the ground, would kick Ben, who was thrown into the sky. How dare you say that you will win, seeing as it is obvious that Wrath will win this fight, said Issei, starting to run in the direction where Ben landed on his feet. After that both tigers would begin to run against each other, restarting a wild battle, where both wearers of the Omnitrix would be hurt by the other. When one hit the other did too, when one bit the other repeated the action against the other, until the moment came in which both, taking out their retractable claws, would begin to cut each other, thus starting a fight where kicks, punches, scratches, bites, headbutts and the occasional lunge rained down, until an Issei turned into a Wrath would become more enraged, so deciding something, he would push Ben away from him, and then bring his left hand to the dial of his Omnitrix. If Wrath can't defeat you in his phase form, then his ultimate form will defeat you easily, Issei said euphorically before pressing the dial of the Omnitrix and being enveloped in a green light. Issei, Wrath Supreme. Supreme Wrath, the evolved alien roared, launching himself towards Ben, who looked surprised. But still Ben also launched himself against Issei. Both started another fight where the supremacy of the supreme alien was evident. Gaining more ground in the fight, he would manage to hit Ben in the stomach, then hold him by the right leg, and then pull him and hit him against the ground, then do it again by hitting him against the ground on the other side. Thus repeating the action several times, and then throwing the primitive Wrath into the sky, and waiting for a moment when Ben was falling, Issei would give him an accurate blow to Ben's stomach, which was thrown flying backwards, landing on the ground of the roof of the building in a brutal way, then rolling a little and falling on his back. So that later some beeps began to sound in the Omnitrix of his chest. I told you, Supreme Wrath will defeat you with ease, said Issei, approaching Ben, who was enveloped by a green light, which when it faded, showed the brown-haired human partly anodized again. Oh come on man, that was abuse. Besides, what's this about Supremes? Ben asked, confused, lying on the floor. What, in this world where Supreme Wrath now lives, haven't the events of the Ultimatrix happened? Issei asked, confused and abruptly. I have no idea what an Ultimatrix is, could you tell me? Ben replied, getting up from the ground and then shaking the dust off his clothes. Supreme Wrath won't tell you on his deathbed, not in a million years, Issei said angrily, pointing at Ben with annoyance. And would you tell me? Asked a small grey being very familiar to both Omnitrix wearers. Asmith Yoda, they said at the same time, seeing Galvin. That's me, Galvin began to say, one of the most intelligent minds among 4 or 5 galaxies, beginning to walk towards the Supreme Wrath. Hello, I see that you know something about me, apart from the fact that you got my name wrong, said Asmith, somewhat annoyed at the mistake in his name. At that, Supreme Wrath would be enveloped by a green light, which when it faded showed Issei without his vigilante suit, surprising Ben at the identity of the brown-haired boy who had the same eyes and the same shade of brown. Apart from that, it slightly surprised Asmith, who did not expect that the other bearer of the Omnitrix would reveal himself at that moment. After that, both would see how Issei activated the minus of the Omnitrix and selected an option, causing the same device to be enveloped in a green light. Hi to Issei, part Tennyson and Anodite, second bearer of the Omnitrix from a parallel universe, heir and reincarnation of Ben 10,000, Issei replied, showing the Omnitrix. Well, that explains several things, said Asmith, surprised. Chapter 16. Repentance and proposal of entourage again. Storyteller. Let's see what happened, said Drake, seeing an Issei in the room of his home. In his right hand was a disc with the symbol of intergalactic peace on it. I joined the plumbers. I met the creator of the Omnitrix in this world, but not before having a chase and a fight against a Ben Tennyson of this world where I won. Then I met Asmith, we talked, I told him how I got the Omnitrix, who I am, about you and Battery, and in the end, he gave me this plumber badge, and now I think I'm a plumber. I don't know the truth. Magistrate Max has to call me, Issei said thoughtfully. I see, Drake said normally. And now what are we going to do? Battery asked. Well, I told them not to contact me for a while, because I have to help the Grimoire in their training. He lets out a sigh. How the hell did I get into this, Issei complained, throwing himself on his own bed. I don't know, maybe Celestial Sapien have something to do with Celestial Sapien. They constantly modify the universe, apart from the fact that they tend to see other beings as entertainment, that being the case of Ben, and most likely yours too, said Drake. Maybe that's it, Issei said. The next day. It was a beautiful new Friday. The bees were singing, the flowers were blooming. On days like this, annoying alarm clocks fly out and through the windows of the home. That was the case of Issei's alarm clock, which was thrown through the window by the same brown-haired boy who, annoyed, would get up from his bed, beginning to head to the dining room of his house. Good morning, Issei greeted the people who were there, these being his mother Mitsuki, his sister Kani, and his adoptive sister, Asia. Good morning, Issei, San Asia greeted with a smile, being the only one who greeted until. Good morning, son, Mitsuki greeted his son with a smile, which showed happiness, but his mana showed something else, which was noticed by Issei. Is that sadness and regret? Issei asked himself and then realized something, and who is that breakfast for? Dad is supposed to have already left, Issei said calmly, passing by his mother to take some things and start making his own breakfast. It's your breakfast, dear, the mother said with a sadness in her voice that was noticed by almost everyone. What? Issei began to say, surprised, turning around and facing his mother. Who are you and what did you do to my mother? She would never make me a kind of breakfast like that, Issei asked and said defensively, thinking that before him was an evil alien who had discovered that he is the Omniverse hero and that he changed places with his mother. At that, a surprised Kani would approach her mother, taking her by the shoulders and then taking her temperature. Mom, are you okay? Are you sick? It would be better to take you to a hospital, Kani asked, worried about her mother, and how could she not be? Her mother never showed any kind of interest towards Issei. She was never surprised by anything he did, being better than Kani more than once. Really? Mitsuki asked with glassy eyes, confusing her children. What do you mean, Mom? Kani asked confused. Is it really that weird that she's affectionate with Issei? Mitsuki asked, starting to tear up. Partner, you already know what to do, Drake said to Issei through the brown-haired boy's mind, showing a calm and understandable tone in the face of the situation. Yes, it seems he realized his mistake, Issei thought, responding to Drake, then approached his mother, pushed Kani aside and hugged his mother. Come on, Mom, don't cry, don't blame yourself and don't be distressed, since everything is fine. Do you want to know? Issei began to say with a smile, receiving a yes from his mother. Why am I here? Issei answered with a smile on his face, thus calming his mother. Time after. RINNN, RINNN, RINNN. The Omnitrix alarm sounded in its digital clock form, to which Issei raised his arm to see what it was, seeing that it was ticking away at the time. Damn, we have to leave now, we're late, Issei said in a hurry, but he would be stopped by Asia. Issei-san, but you don't have your school uniform on, Asia informed, to which Issei would see that she only had the clothes she used as pajamas, a white short-sleeved t-shirt, along with black shorts with 2 lines on each side, in the San style. Okay, you guys go out while I catch up with you, said Issei heading to his room. Once there he would activate the Omnitrix being enveloped in a green light. Issei fast track. Time after. Traveling at high speed, you could see an Issei turned into fast track, reaching an alley, braking suddenly and skidding a little. He would brake masterfully, demonstrating his greater control with the alien than the first time he used it. Being enveloped by a green light, Issei would return to normal and then head to the exit of the alley, turning left and almost reaching the doors of his Kuo Academy, which were closed. At that, Issei lets out a sigh. Damn, Issei cursed and then looked around, noticing that there was no one, but without him realizing it, a black-haired girl with violet eyes and glasses was in the institute watching the brown-haired boy through a window. Seriousness could be seen on her face. Without anyone seeing, Issei would create some platforms with his mana, which he began to climb as if they were simple stairs. Once above the academy fence, he would jump to the other side, landing on his feet and undoing his magical constructions, and then begin to walk directly to the main building, not knowing that he was being watched by a black-haired girl with violet eyes. Did you notice her? Nuevo asked. Yes, I noticed. I think her name is Sona Shitori, and if I remember correctly she is the student council president, Issei responded with a thought. Note aura, it's that of a demon, Nuevo reported. Yes, I noticed that too, Issei replied. Time after. What does your clan leader want? Momo, Issei asked a surprised white-haired girl. The brown-haired boy was lying on the same tree where Lena went to look for him some time ago. Well, she wants to see you, Haidu, Issei, the white-haired girl answered seriously and calmly, watching how the brown-haired man got up from where he was lying and then shook the dirt off his clothes and walked a little towards her. Okay, then let's go, Sona Shitori said, Issei making quotation marks with his fingers around the surname of the student council club president. At that, Momo was surprised, but she preferred to put it aside and take the brown-haired man to her queen. After a few seconds, Issei and Momo had already arrived at the student council. The entire trip was in complete silence, Momo wondering what the brown-haired boy knew, and Issei talking to Nuevo and Battery about what could happen here. Opening the door, both would pass. Once inside, Issei would see Sona Shitori and Ria's Gremory sitting in a seat each, Sona behind her respective desk and Ria's in an armchair in front of a table at the side of the room. Their respective servants were located in a way that Issei could not make any attempt on their kings in title. Hello everyone, Issei greeted calmly, looking at both kings. Hello Issei, Haidu, Sona greeted with a serious expression. Hello Issei, Ria's greeted more normally, unlike her friend. Yes, hello, why did you call me today? Issei said calmly, trying not to sound rude. Well, today we called you so you could decide once and for all, said Rias with a smile. What did you decide? Exactly? Issei asked, making an idea that only tired him. You saying directly that you want to join my peerage. I know that I have denied it only because of the fact, she would say in an arrogant tone, but would be interrupted by Issei, who raised his hand. First things first, changing my species, reincarnating into another being, would only cause me to lose my abilities. Second, I am not at all interested in what your species and the others can give me for having me in their ranks. Third, and the reason why I don't become a demon, I would become a slave, someone who has to follow to the letter every order you give him. I'm not stupid, Rias. Apart from that, I know very well the disadvantages of being a demon. Light magic affects me, as do holy weapons, holy water, Jesus's crosses and prayers in the name of God and more, all related to the church. A shame since the city is full of them. Apart from that, I already have all the advantages of being a demon, so let's stop this, because the most I will help you with your commitment will be to help you and your pieces in their training and nothing more, Issei responded seriously. He was already tired that every time he and Rias saw each other, this one had to Pedro that one to his name. It was annoying to him. He was deliberately pressuring him to be one of his pieces, and added to the fact that the Redeed probably didn't know which one to give him. But she began to say Rias, but Sona interrupted her. Laugh enough, he doesn't want to be of your nobility, accept it, you can't force someone to join you, Sona said seriously, looking at her best friend. Thanks, Sona, I would say your last name, but I know very well that Shitori is not the original, said Issei, grateful to the black hair. Citri, Sona Citri is my real name, Issei Haidu, Sona responded politely and in a respectful manner, giving her an aura of nobility, something that Issei noticed through his mana. Okay, Sona Citri, if you had to tell me something, I'm sorry, but I have to leave to do some things, and if you called me to be your nobility, I'm sorry, I won't join, and the reasons are the same as I told Ria, said Issei, making a small bow, and then waiting for Sona's response. Okay, Haidu-san, it's a shame you couldn't join my entourage, but I can't force you to do so, but anyway, I'd like us to at least be allies, Sona said politely, and that would be something. I agree with that, so without anything else to say, or do I leave, said Issei, turning around, going to the door, but someone would have to speak at that moment. Chapter 17. Omnitrix vs Boosted Gear. Storyteller. 2. I still don't understand why he desperately wants him in our entourage, Ria-sama, after all he's a good-for-nothing, said Kanny, annoyed and jealous at the same time. All week she only heard about Issei from her entourage companions, and that bothered her. After all, she was the Securite and was more important than a simple human. Cough, Anodite part, cough. I will be, but what are you being below me, Issei said with a confident smile, but a glow would come out of Kanny's left arm, showing a red gauntlet. Opening his eyes a little more in surprise, Issei would look at his sister, who would smile arrogantly. Wow, it seems you already have the complete boosted gear, but that's still not enough to beat me, Issei said, still confident. He highly doubted that she could do the balance breaker. Do you want to try? Kanny asked confidently. At that moment Riaz was about to stop the argument between siblings, but Sona stopped her by holding her shoulder. Sona, what are you doing? She asked, confused, looking at one of her best friends. I'm just stopping you. Think about it carefully. If Kanny-san and Issei-san fight, we'll be able to see what Issei is capable of, so if one day we have to fight against him, we can defeat him, Sona responded seriously and with an analytical expression. Looking at both brothers, Issei's eyes glowed green from his mana, and the gem on Kanny's gauntlet glowed brightly. Fight with Issei. Sona, Issei is our ally, Ria said, somewhat angry at the end. I know you laugh, but he tells us that it will be like this forever. I still don't trust him, she answered, sounding even more serious. At that, Riaz would let out a sigh. Her friend was right. She assured her that Issei would be her ally forever, so resignedly she accepted that both brothers would fight. Time after. Right now, sister and brother, half demon against human and anodite, red against green, Omnitrix against boosted gear, Issei Haidu Tennyson, the new bearer of the Omnitrix versus Kanny Haidu, the new Securite. The battle will take place in the forest, being surrounded by a magic barrier held by both retinues, which will be attentive to who will be the winner. No one can interfere to help either of the two, or else their opponent will automatically win. Ready to lose? Omniverse, Kanny asked in a semi-combat pose. Of course not, Securite, Issei said, bringing his hand to the Omnitrix, ready to transform. Sona was the one who would count for the fight to begin. Starting at 3, the two looked at each other furiously. At 2, Issei activated the Omnitrix, letting the transformation be random. At 1, Kant stood up straight, taking a breath, something that confused Issei, and when Sona shouted, now both were surrounded by a light, Issei by a green one and Kanny by a red one. Balance breaker, boosted gear, scale mail, Kanny shouted as she was surrounded by a reddish armor, with green and some red gems, along with sharp golden parts. Kanny balance breaker, boosted gear, scale mail. At that, everyone was surprised. Kanny had surely made a forbidden movement. Even Issei, who heard the scream, was surprised. Let's see what you can do against this, said Kanny confidently, seeing the green-eyed man's transformation. Issei forearms. I think you have it clear. I will defeat you, said Issei while clashing fists and palms, maintaining a defiant smile as well as his gaze. At that, Kanny would growl, then launch herself towards Issei, thanks to the thrusters she has on her back. Arriving in front of him, Issei would stop her with his two upper hands, holding her by the hands. After that, with his other two hands he would hit her in the stomach, throwing her upwards. Then he would jump, reaching her to give her a hammer blow with his left hand, throwing her to the ground. But thinking quickly, Kanny would use her thrusters, avoiding crashing into the dirt ground. After that, she would move aside, avoiding Issei from falling on top of her. After that, she would move at great speed thanks to her thrusters, immediately reaching Issei, giving him a blow to the side of his body. She would throw him several meters to the right. When he recovered and looked forward, he would only receive a blow to the face. That same blow threw him even further away than he already was from the center of the battlefield. Being about to receive another blow while he was lying on the ground, Issei would quickly press the Omnitrix, changing transformations. Issei XLR8. Lowering his visor, XLR8 disappeared from everyone's sight at the same time that Kanny punched the spot where he was before. Where did you go, coward, Kanny shouted angrily, but she could hear how they destroyed the floor behind her, so she turned around and opened her eyes in surprise. Running at high speed, while the ground broke and raised dirt and dust, Issei would be going directly towards Kanny, who, due to surprise, did not move, so being a few meters from her, Issei would transform again. Issei fire. Fire, Issei shouted as he punched Kanny, causing an explosion of fire. Boom. He throws Kanny into the air with his broken armor. Issei would just watch as he managed to recover in the air and repair his armor, which at the same time directed its trajectory towards him. First of all, fire, you are one of the best, Issei said with a smile, while he molded the fire from his left hand, forming a sword which slowly went from a yellow color to a light blue one, while the fire sword itself became longer and much thinner. Launching one against the other, both opponents would attack each other, passing to one side of the other. Issei would land on the floor as well as Kanny. Waiting a few seconds, Kanny's armor would fall apart due to cuts in the same metal it was made of. Some parts were melted. Once the armor was completely taken apart, it showed that the brown-haired girl had several wounds and burns on her body. While that happened, Issei would return to his human form remembering what happened. Flashback. Being about to hit each other, Issei wrapped his body in fire. The same fire would pass inside and along the side of the armor, burning it and burning the brown-haired girl inside it, while the sword, which was not wrapped by the yellow fire, was quickly passing through the armor, melting it even more and cutting it. After that, all the fire quickly gathered next to Canny, showing the fire alien intact. After that, both opponents would pass next to each other, Issei landing calmly and Canny on the verge of unconsciousness from the pain, while her armor was falling, piece by piece. End of flashback. I hope that with it you have learned that you do not have to keep bothering me, said Issei calmly, watching how the others approached Canny to treat her wounds. Chapter 18. Enemies from a past life. Storyteller. More than a month had passed since what happened. Issei had helped Ria's entourage in their training, obviously not showing too much. He admitted that it was easy, and at the same time it wasn't the reason. Not all the entourage's stewards made it easy for him. Kiba and Kaneko were the ones who cooperated with him the most, and he even gave them some gifts. Kiba made a sword from diamond crystals. It was difficult for him, but he managed to make it from tatanite. It was difficult for him, but he managed to recreate the mineral perfectly, so by making the sword light, it would be perfect to be extremely resistant and sharp, one of the perfect weapons for Kiba. Then Kaneko, the white-haired girl, improved her own fighting gloves, adding tatanite to them, giving her more power in her blows. After that, Akeno followed. With her it was a little difficult since her personality had to embarrass the brown-haired boy, but she managed to achieve her goal. Akeno improved with her own spells and at the same time learned to fight hand-to-hand in a better way thanks to Issei, who explained to her that at any moment she would have to fight face-to-face against the enemy. Knowing how to fight hand-to-hand in a better way would be useful to her. With that explanation, the black-haired boy accepted the complete training of the brown-haired boy. Annie and Ria's were difficult for him. He really didn't know which of the two was more difficult for him. On one hand, he had a girl who was his sister. She hadn't been in the supernatural world for long, with no experience that would surely be gained by receiving beating after beating, and on the other hand, there was the girl who was the one Isama of the academy. With her only magic of destruction and with her no experience in hand-to-hand combat, both arrogant and conceited, Canny trying to threaten Issei to get something, or to get him to do something, and Ria's trying to use her charms to get him to do something. What a shame they were facing someone who didn't care about any threats, and someone who wasn't attracted to the red-haired girl's body. I improve the abilities of both and at the same time teach them to fight hand-to-hand in a better way. Canny learned quickly, both magically and physically, something that Issei appreciated. While Ria's only relied and trusted on her destruction magic, she did not have her other statistics balanced. It was the one that took the longest to train. Note, I do not hate Ria's, but seriously. She is the king of the clan and leaves everything to Issei, and when she receives a beating, she just cries begging for it to stop and then surrender. If I'm going to do this story, I will do it stronger. Oh God, said Issei as he threw himself onto his bed. Today he had returned after the month of training he had, and he was tired, both physically and mentally. Do you think they'll win? Asked Omnitrix from the Omnitrix. They will lose, Issei replied simply. Hey? But you trained them, why don't you believe that they will win? Battery asked, coming out of the Omnitrix and seeing his friend. They do not have the same ability and experience as me, added to the fact that there are more of them, and that they have half or almost the same experience as me, Issei responded and then closed his eyes and fell asleep. Unknown place. It was night, the full moon was shining beautifully, you could hear the nocturnal animals, but at any moment a portal would open in a meadow. 5 entities would emerge from the portal, one after the other. Are we there? Asked the third one to leave, he was carrying a scythe in his hand. According to the locator, this is the dimension, universe and timeline, where your Omnitrix is said the first to come out, a 40-year-old man with red, gray and white clothes. On his left arm, there was a red Omnitrix. We have to find him and take the Omnitrix from him, said the second one seriously. Do what you want with the Omnitrix, as long as I have the head of Tennyson Successor I will be pleased, said the fifth one who was carrying an alien weapon rifle on his back. Don't start with your hunter stuff, said the fifth with annoyance. Shut up, or I'll hunt you down, said the fourth, holding his gun and pointing it at the fifth. Come on, Hunter, let's see who gets to hell first, exclaimed the fifth, extending his right arm where a sphere of energy was formed. Shut up, both of you, said the third, annoyed. Don't get involved, they both said at the same time, then they would redirect their attacks to the third one. Stop fighting, we are here not to kill each other, but Tennyson's successor, said the second one seriously and annoyed. Leave them, if they want to kill each other, that's how it is, said the first one with disinterest. At that the second one would growl annoyed and turn around when he saw the first one. You better stop that attitude, damn ex-Galvin, said the second one annoyed. I'm still a Galvin, only I'm trapped in this disgusting human form, said the first one, annoyed, turning to look at him. The SK, just activate your defective Omnitrix, so he comes, said the second one, turning his back on the ex-Galvan. The RRR, whatever, he turns the dial on his Omnitrix and it activates, releasing some suckers. But Issei. He would suddenly stand up when his Omnitrix suddenly activated and projected a map of the world, marking the Omnitrix symbol in red. What the hell? Issei wondered, looking at the Omnitrix with confusion. That's new, said Trix from the brown-haired man's mind. He comes out of the Omnitrix. What's happening? Battery asked, confused. I don't know, this is new, but from what I see it's a signal from an object. The signal is the same as the Omnitrix, Issei answered, confused at the end, and then got up from his bed. Are we going? Battery asked. Yes, since what I see, there is a place where the renegades tend to gather very often, said Issei, and then began to get dressed. Time after. Arriving at the place turned into an astrodactyl, Issei would return to his human form. So walking a little further, he would reach the center of the meadow, looking around in confusion. How strange, this is where the signal comes from, Issei said, confused, but he would hear a voice behind him that he recognized perfectly. Wow, so you are Tennyson's successor, said Ben's voice behind the brown-haired man, so turning around he opened his eyes in surprise. I am possible, Issei said in shock, but behind the people others would begin to arrive. Just what I wanted, the successor's head, he said, sadistically loading his weapon. I will finally be able to annihilate Asmuth and Benjamin's protected one, the fifth shouted with emotion and in a sadistic way. We just have to kill you, and the Omnitrix will be mine, said the second one with an evil smile under his breathing mask. My revenge against Tennyson will finally be achieved, the third one shouted with emotion and in a dramatic way. The one in the middle, with the scythe and the cape, but without the hood on. For the Celestial Sapien, please help me, said Issei to recognize them all, people he only saw in his dreams. In the dreams he had to be able to have Ben's memory. Chapter 19. Between Life and Death. Storyteller. A red flash appeared in the meadow. Once it was gone, it showed the transformed albedo. ALBEDO 10,000, Ultimate Source Monkey. Shit, said Issei before activating the Omnitrix, but when he was going to transform he would be held by Turher through his tentacles. Not so fast, Successor, the Ictonurite said mockingly, but he would move away from Issei when Trix manipulated the Omnitrix, thus transforming Issei. Issei fire. Launching a flame at the Ictonurite, Issei would then propel himself upwards, avoiding an onslaught from albedo, then he would aim down after channeling heat into his body and launch the largest flame he could make, but when he least expected it, he was launched against him, thus cutting off his attack. Once on the ground he would be held by Vilgax, who hit him in the chest, thus weakening Issei. Then he would lift him up and then throw him away. In the city. Everything was quiet, people were walking around doing their shopping or working at night, but at that moment a small meteor would fall from the sky, which crashed into an abandoned building, that caused people to get scared and flee, leaving the scene behind. While in the abandoned building, Issei came out turned into fire, turning out to be the meteor. After that he would return to his human form and fall to his knees spitting blood. Damn, my ribs are broken, Issei said with difficulty. Trix manipulated the Omnitrix again, transforming Issei. Issei swamp fire. Turned into a methane ocean, Issei would begin to regenerate, but from one moment to the next, he would receive several shots from Kyber, who was riding on albedo. The two of them were arriving at the place, the others were arriving with them. Albedo would raise her upper arms and transform them into cannons, and then begin to shoot projectiles at Issei. His body was destroyed by each explosion. Go and destroy the Omnitrix, but not its core, Vilgax ordered with a malicious smile. Malware would turn his legs into one similar to XLR8's and move at great speed, reaching Issei in a few seconds. Sharpening the claws of his right hand, he would dig them into Issei's abdomen, while placing his palm on the Omnitrix. Trix and Battery would try to protect it, but malware like a virus would be corrupting the device, unable to do more. Trix and Battery would be about to come out, but trying would be impossible, being corrupted shortly after. An expression would be present in the place. Issei would fly through the smoke, he could regenerate through swamp fire, but now he had lost the transformation. Managing to stabilize himself in the air, he would create a slide with his mana, reaching the ground calmly. His clothes were torn, he felt that something was missing inside him. Looking at his left hand, he would open his eyes to see that his Omnitrix was broken, and his core was missing. Oh no, wait, Trix, Battery, where are they? Issei shouted, worried about his friends, but in the distance he would be able to see malware with the core of the Omnitrix in his right hand. This same one is corrupted there. Trying to get up, she would fall to the floor again. One of her legs was broken, but by doing a spell with her mana she would heal it. I have to take it from him, but how? Issei asked himself desperately, but he would have to put those thoughts aside. Creating a mana barrier would prevent more bursts of bullets fired by Kyber from hitting him. While that was happening, Malware approached Vilgax handing him the Omnitrix core. Vilgax would take it and place it in his left gauntlet, right in the middle hole. After that he would activate a communicator and speak through it. Cheer up, open the other portals, Vilgax ordered. Behind him, several portals would open. From them an army of Byads would begin to emerge. Walking like soldiers they would remain behind Vilgax. Another portal would open above the group of villains. From it would fall a silhouette larger than Vilgax and almost the same size as Alberto. It was a chimera. It was composed of several animal parts, including also aliens that Issei has used, but one part of it stood out, and that was the chest, where a pink glass panel was there. Inside there was a greenish liquid with a brain. This same brain was connected to the chimera's body through several cables, but some antennas were sticking out of the body, and these same ones were directly connected to the brain. Sorry for being late, Tennyson, but as you can see I was busy, said the chimera from a device under his chest, the voice of which was that of Dr. Animo, but robotic. Wow, but it's the Sinister Six, Issei said mockingly, but he would have to reinforce his mana shield when Malware fired a blast of energy and albedo some projectiles. I'm at a disadvantage, but that doesn't matter, I have to help those fools, Issei thought, seeing the Omnitrix core in Vilgax's position. After that, Issei's look of despair would turn to one of determination. He was determined to save his friends, so preparing himself, he would create a mana dome and then say a prayer in an inaudible whisper, and in a greenish flash, the brown-haired man would disappear from the place, appearing in a safer place on the battlefield. Charging towards Kyber, he would create a shield and sword of mana. When he helped the Grimoire follower in his training, Kiba had taught him much of the art of the sword, something he was going to use now. Increasing his speed after reciting a spell, Issei would reach the hunter who had a red energy knife in his hands. Both clashed weapons. Issei would block his left when the Turher slashed with his scythe. To see what his attack failed, he would use his telekinesis, sending the Tennyson Haidu flying through the skies, but using a teleportation spell, Issei would break free from his room to appear behind him and slash him from behind, which seriously injured him. He was not afraid to kill him, since he knew that this was a simple clone. Always and almost all the Turhers were clones of the original, but with steel that would be left exposed, but at the last second it would be covered with a mana dome, preventing ranged attacks from Kyber, Albedo and Malware from hitting it directly. But while they were fighting, Vilgax and Dr. Animo were busy with other matters. What are you doing? Dr. Animo asked to see how Vilgax was turning the Omnitrix dial. Malware told me that there were some entities in the core of the Omnitrix, but apparently due to the corruption of the same, they were completely sealed in the core, Vilgax said, annoyed. I see, but leave that aside. The corruption of the Omnitrix had to have corrupted them too, but leaving all that issue aside, we must now begin the conquest in this universe, he said encouragingly. Vilgax would activate the Omnitrix and oppress it, thus turning his army of Byads into one of Petrosapiens. Temporary diamond version, apart from the eyes and the Omnitrix, I imagined. Which are red. Diamond he roared throughout the exercise, ready to obey his master's orders. At that Vilgax would smile. His entire plan was going perfectly. All that was needed was to annihilate the Ben Tennyson of this universe and annihilate the successor of the Ben of his universe, and he would have a clear path to nominate this new universe, hundreds of thousands, millions of planets, waiting for him to dominate them and prove that his species was the superior of all. But all good things had to end when a mana attack was launched at his back. This same attack did not do much damage, but it made him angry. Who dared to attack him? So turning around he would see Issei himself was hurt, blood falling from his forehead and lips. His right arm was down, surely broken, his left arm raised with sword in hand, his leg separated, although it was noticeable that his left leg was hurt. Apart from that, more than one blood stain could be seen on his clothes. Behind him were the ashes of the Turher. Next to them Kyber unconscious on the floor, Malware arriving at the place with several holes in the body and some missing parts. That made his gesture of annoyance turn into satisfaction upon seeing the successor of his worst enemy in that state. He began to approach Issei. The latter would launch himself at him, but with his right hand he would stop him by holding his mana sword, then he would destroy it with brute force, then he would grab him by the neck with his left hand, raising him, bringing him closer to his face. And then speak. Boy, you sure look miserable, and to think you're his successor, Vilgax said with mockery in his voice. At least I don't need the help of others to be able to beat someone, Issei also said mockingly, spitting blood on his face. That angered the alien with octopus characteristics, who attacked Issei against the ground. Then he would take him again, this time by the left leg, and throw him away from him to crash into a car. Issei avoided death by protecting and reinforcing his body with mana, but that would not prevent him from being on the verge of death. Vilgax would turn around, seeing his army. He had no problems with it, but he wanted more variety, raising his left arm to see the core of the Omnitrix, but he would see that he didn't have it, so turning around he would see Issei with the core in his left hand. He was manipulating it, surely to release the entities inside it. or surely to return it to normal and thus ensure the safety of his friends. Vilgax saw this with disinterest, so charging energy in his eyes, he would fire his laser beam vision. These would reach Issei in a short time, thus passing through the brown-haired man's abdomen, who was left in shock. After that Vilgax would begin to approach him while speaking. I have made the same mistake over and over again. I had never seriously attacked to kill Tennyson, but I will not make that same mistake with his successor. He holds Issei's hand, which is the core of the Omnitrix, and raises it a little since I remember. I once heard that being on the verge of death there are possibilities of seeing your life as you please. He smiles under his respirator. Let's see if that's true, Vilgax finished saying. Hitting him in the abdomen with his right arm, Issei would fall to the floor without moving, but his hand would never let go of the Omnitrix core. I see that the entities that are in the core of the Omnitrix are important to you. A shame you will never see them again, said Vilgax, moving his hand to Issei's, but a monodome with several magic seals would prevent him from removing it. HMNP. It seems I will manage to put a defense on it, something that will be of no use to you, Vilgax continued saying, charging his laser vision. But something would hit him, throwing him far away. Once he stood up he would turn around, seeing Ben turned into a human Gaussor. It was evident that he was angry. Rook approached the wounded Issei and began to treat his wounds as best he could. Damn Tennyson, he said under his breath and then shouted, come on, take care of Haidu, and I'll take care of Tennyson, Vilgax ordered in a shout. They charged towards Ben and began a hand-to-hand combat. While they were fighting, Dr. Animo remembered Rook and Issei. Rook would take his weapon in hand and go on the defensive. I know what you're doing is right, but you're interfering with my plans, Animo said, extending his left arm to Rook. From his palm whips of pink energy came out that managed to catch the plumber. Floating in the darkness itself, Issei would be with a lost look. Before his eyes had passed all the moments he had had until he got to where he is now. Everyone he met, although admitting that he did not have a great variety of friends, speaking the some that he could say were his friends were Drake, Trix and Battery, while those who were getting closer were Kiba, Kaneko and Akeno. Damn, and I wanted to invite Akeno to have some mate, Issei said listlessly. Little by little he was beginning to feel his strength fading. And the worst thing is that I will die without being able to save those fools who took so long to get out of the Omnitrix, said Issei, frustrated, spinning in the air and seeing what he believed would be the sky. Do you think so? A voice asked behind Issei. He recognized the voice. Ben? Issei asked, surprised, turning around to see him. Do you know anyone else with my voice and appearance? The older brown-haired man asked with a mocking smile. Yes, Albedo, Issei responded with simplicity and reluctance, looking down. Hey, look up, never look down in defeat, Ben said, placing one of his hands on Issei's shoulder. Defeat? I don't care about losing or winning, I care more about not being able to get Omni Drag and Battery out of the Omnitrix core, said Issei, looking up to see him. His eyes had crystallized, about to cry. I know, Ben started to say calmly and softly, but that's not the point of being sad. You can still save them, Ben said with a smile. But how? I don't have the Omnitrix and I'm not powerful enough to defeat Albedo, Vilgax and Animo, Issei asked quietly. I know, but remember where a hero gets his strength from. He places a finger on Issei's chest, right on the heart. The will to move forward and help everyone is the reason for our strength. Issei, you are a Tennyson, you are my successor. The fact that you do not have the Omnitrix does not make you weak, on the contrary, you showed what you are capable of doing. But tell me now, do you have the will to move forward? He said, and Ben asked seriously. Yes, I have it, said Issei, wiping away some tears that escaped, apart from smiling. Yeah, that's the excitement, Ben said, patting him on the back. Now we have to come back, stronger than ever, Ben continued with a smile. How? Didn't you see the state of my body? Issei asked, confused. Yes, I almost forgot, maybe I should give you your gift much earlier, Ben said somewhat thoughtfully, solving a look of confusion from Issei. My gift? Issei asked, confused. If it's your birthday present, remember that after 12 at night, it's a new day, so today is your birthday, Ben said with a smile towards Issei. By the way, I forgot about it, Issei said simply. But anyway, it's time to go back, Ben said, extending his left arm with a smile. Do the same, and both of them would shake their left hands. A green glow enveloped them and then began to expand in the darkness. Returning to reality, Ben would be having trouble with Vilgax. Rook would be about to be finished off by Animo, but a flash of green would catch everyone's attention, who would turn around seeing that it came from the place where Issei was, and once the flash faded, it showed Issei healed, still with his clothes torn, but with a new Omnitrix on his wrist. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.